But back at Phoenix Christian Prep, school choice advocate Jeff Blake is more optimistic. He doesn't see it as an existential battle. Either way, what happens in Arizona will be watched closely, as it could have consequences for the future of education in America.
In an environment where there is choice, there is an environment of competition, and that's going to force us all to be better. The beautiful thing is that it takes the accountability from the government and puts it in the hands of parents. And when parents are making the choices, all schools are accountable to parents. And I like that.
15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
This edition of Assignment was presented by me, Alex Last. The producer was Ellie House.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this is CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba. Welcome to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass, in this week for Marcy Marcusa. With me this morning are our show director, May McKillop, and our studio technician, Abby Adiemi. Here's what's coming up on the show. When her homeland was invaded in 2022, Ukrainian-Canadian Tetiana Harushik was compelled to act. We'll hear how the musician and composer transformed stories from refugees into art. As well, for the second time in just over 2 years, the World Health Organization is declaring Mpox a global health emergency. It comes amid an outbreak that spread from the Democratic Republic of Congo to neighboring countries in Africa. And for many years, big retailers have exercised generous return policies, but with many reporting abuse, some are opting to change the rules. We're going to hear from personal finance columnist Rubino Ahmed Haq with more on that. And right now, with a look at the CBC News headlines, here's Riley Lachuk.
Good morning. An Interlake Region Chief says it feels like First Nations there are finally being heard. This after he says the province promised to sign an agreement to review plans for a massive flood mitigation project. Lake Manitoba Chief Cornell McLean says he was encouraged after meeting with the Premier and other chiefs this week. And new figures this morning showing Winnipeg's population grew by about 20,000 people over the past year. The city says about 816,000 people now live here in the Manitoba capital, newcomers to Canada, the biggest drivers of that growth. We'll have more on those stories coming up after World Report.
Thank you, Riley.
No problem.
That's CBC's Riley Lachuk. Looking at the forecast for today in Winnipeg, cloudy, a few showers starting early this morning. In fact, it was showering on my way in. It looks like it still is. 10 to 20 millimeters expected. Breezy this afternoon, high 22. A few showers ending this evening, then mainly cloudy, breezy with a low of 16. For tomorrow, clearing with local smoke late in the morning and into the afternoon. Breezy, high 25, and humid as well. It'll feel like 30 tomorrow. Brandon, showers today, risk of a thunderstorm late this afternoon. Fog patches breaking up this morning. Breezy, high 24. Cloudy tonight, chance of showers early in the evening, then partly cloudy. Risk of a thunderstorm as well. Local smoke, wind becoming light, low 16. For tomorrow, widespread smoke and breezy starting in the morning, high 24. World Report is up next.
On cue.
Are you sure you want to do this?
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Director Fede Alvarez didn't want to rely on CGI for his new film, Alien Romulus. He'll tell you why he used practical effects and even hired the puppeteers from the original Alien movies to make a convincing space thriller.
Cue, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. A new round of talks to end the Israel-Hamas war is supposed to begin today, but expectations for a deal are low. Negotiations have been complicated by the assassination of one of Hamas's top leaders, but the United States says it is still committed to getting a ceasefire plan in place. For more, let's go to Richard Madden in Washington. And Richard, what is the state of these talks this morning?
Yeah, in a word, delicate. Top officials from the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar will meet with an Israeli delegation in Doha for the first time in months. There's little hope for a breakthrough, but there is potential for progress and to lower the temperature in the volatile region. Now, Hamas says it won't attend the talks, but they'll listen to mediators. They accuse Israel of stalling negotiations to keep the war going, while Israel accuses Hamas of stalling and continuing to keep hostages. Take a listen to State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel.
Our point of view is that all negotiators should return to the table and bring this deal to conclusion. It is far time for the remaining hostages to be released, which of course include American citizens, and bring relief to the people of Gaza under the deal that is now on the table.
Of course, fueling more tensions are those retaliation threats by Iran against Israel after Hamas leader was recently killed on Iranian soil. And that could widen the conflict in the Middle East.
The United States has been heavily involved in talks since the war began in October. Is its presence at the negotiating table still being seen as valuable?
Yeah, the initial framework for the ceasefire deal was proposed by the U.S., and there was an agreement in principle, but the Israelis and Hamas are at odds of some of the key points, including how long the ceasefire would last and the control of the checkpoints in Gaza. Now, President Joe Biden says he believes a wider crisis can still be averted if both sides agree to a ceasefire.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
Richard Madden reporting from Washington. The president of Columbia University has resigned months after protests over the war in Gaza took over the New York City campus. Minouche Shafik was criticized for authorizing arrests on school property. That marked the first time mass arrests had been made on Columbia's campus since protests over the Vietnam War. Shafik is the third president of an Ivy League school to step down over protests related to the Israel-Hamas conflict. In Calcutta, India, tens of thousands of women marched and held signs in overnight protests. They're demanding justice. A 31-year-old trainee doctor was murdered at the hospital where she worked. India's prime minister is now calling for stricter punishment for crimes committed against women.
एक समाज के नाते हमें गंभीरता से सोचना होगा.
In a speech during India's Independence Day celebrations, Narendra Modi says the country must take these crimes seriously. A volunteer hospital worker was arrested in connection with the case in Calcutta. There have been accusations of cover-up and negligence by the authorities. A new report into the death of a young BC firefighter is looking at issues with safety protocols at the province's wildfire service. Devon Gale was killed last summer. A burning tree fell on her near Revelstoke. As Brady Strachan reports, the report's findings lead to changes to the organization's internal culture.
The death of Devon Gale sent a shockwave through the province last July. Just 19 years old, Gale was already in her third season with the BC Wildfire Service.
She was a light. Nobody met
A memorial service was attended by hundreds of her fellow wildland firefighters. Now, details have emerged about what led up to Gale's death and what didn't happen with regards to safety protocols around danger trees. A WorkSafe BC report says Gale was using a chainsaw to cut a log on the forest floor when a burning cedar fell and killed her. The report lays out the missed safety steps at the site, including that firefighters brought up concerns to their supervisor about the burning tree. Despite this, the tree was not assessed and Gale was allowed to work around it. The agency also found the BC Wildfire Service has a culture that normalizes risks around dangerous trees, even though it's aware of the safety concerns related to them. David Greer heads the BC Wildfire Service. Greer says he accepts the report.
This isn't gross negligence by certain individuals. This is the whole of the organization that needs to look at this and do the right thing.
BC Premier David Eby addressed the report's findings.
It was a commitment that I made to Devon's family that this death of a remarkable woman would not be in vain.
Eby says he's directing the Wildfire Service to implement all of the recommendations. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
We have an update on the landslide at the Eagle Gold Mine in Yukon. A pile of cyanide-soaked ore collapsed back in June, and there have been concerns for the safety of the surrounding land and water. Yukon's government took the Victoria Gold Corporation to court. Now a third party is taking over environmental protection work. Jackie Hong has the details.
Yukon Justice Minister Tracy Ann McPhee says the government lost confidence.
Victoria Gold has either been unwilling or unable to date to fulfill the necessary work.
That work centers on preventing more cyanide from entering the surrounding environment. Millions of tons of raw ore being leached with the chemical slid off a pile at the Eagle Gold Mine in late June and into a local stream. Victoria Gold had been in charge of treating the contaminated water. The Yukon government has done inspections and issued corrective orders, but the company hasn't fully complied. Concerns escalated after dead fish were found in a nearby creek at the beginning of August. The government successfully applied to have Victoria Gold put into receivership this week. PricewaterhouseCoopers has been appointed by the court to manage the company's affairs. McPhee says that will ensure proper environmental protection work happens on site.
Nobody wanted to go here.
The mine is on the traditional territory of the First Nation of Nacho Dun. Chief Donna Hope says an intervention is overdue.
Immediate steps are needed to address the millions of liters of toxic cyanide and other contaminants spreading from the mine site.
Victoria Gold CEO and President John McConnell didn't respond to a request for comment. The receiver's staff are now on site. Jackie Hong, CBC News, Whitehorse.
U.S. election campaigning is moving into high gear. Both the Democrats and Republicans are trying to poke holes in each other's policies. For Kamala Harris, her opponents focused on her track record with climate and the economy. Susan Ormiston traveled to Republican VP candidate J.D. Vance's hometown to take the temperature of Midwest voters. She has more from Middletown, Ohio.
J.D. Vance running for U.S. Vice President and a son of Middletown, Ohio, an industrial city built on steel in a county proudly Republican. And Vance is taking aim at the Biden-Harris green energy investments.
A radical left-wing spending wish list which spent millions and billions of dollars on green energy scams.
But Vance's hometown stands to gain from President Biden's climate and infrastructure monies, with over $500 million awarded to the local Cleveland Cliffs steel plant to replace its old blast furnace with electric ones. When completed, slashing carbon emissions, says Tim Furtick of the Blue-Green Alliance.
This investment has to be seen as contributing to the long-term competitiveness of the iron and steel industry in the U.S., and therefore to the long-term job security and livelihoods of the workers.
But Vance and Trump are carving out a climate wedge in this election in favor of even more oil production.
We will drill, baby, drill.
And with his running mate now accusing Harris of stifling the economy.
That makes Kamala Harris directly responsible for this inflation disaster.
Harris is set to lay out her economic plan on Friday. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Middletown, Ohio.
Security will be on high alert on Taylor Swift's Eras tour tonight in London. Last week, her Vienna shows were canceled to prevent an alleged terror attack. And 2 weeks before that, 3 young girls were killed at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in the English town of Southport. Nick Aldworth is the UK's former counter-terrorism national coordinator. He says crowd control will be important tonight.
We do know that terrorists like to attack crowded places. And of course, if we start creating crowded places outside stadiums, then we do potentially correct targets.
Fans who did not get tickets for tonight's show are being asked not to stand outside Wembley Stadium. Taylor Swift fans are often at stadiums before her concerts. They call it tailgating. In Munich last month, an estimated 40,000 people were on the hillside at the concert venue. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. You can listen to us every morning live on the CBC News app. Just tap on the local icon. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass, filling in this week for Marcy Marcusa. Here's what's coming up on this hour of the show. The World Health Organization made an emergency declaration yesterday over Mpox. It comes amid rising concerns about a surge of cases in Africa. We'll hear more about the crisis coming up. Personal finance columnist Rubina Ahmed Haq says next time you buy something you think you might want to return, better find out what the rules are. Big retailers are changing their policies to crack down on repeat offenders. We'll talk with the aid organization Save the Children about the kids in Gaza and their hopes for a ceasefire. But first, turning misery into music, we'll hear from a Ukrainian-Canadian composer at the heart of a new CBC documentary. All this and more coming up on Information Radio. 11 minutes after 6 o'clock, time for news headlines with Riley Laychuk.
Good morning. We'll begin this morning with new figures out showing Winnipeg's population grew by about 20,000 people in the past year. The city's economic development office says about 816,000 people now call Winnipeg home. Newcomers to Canada are the biggest driver of that growth. We'll get reaction to those figures coming up. And the former police sergeant who led the search for Tina Fontaine's killer maintains that they charged the right guy. Saturday marks 10 years since Fontaine's body was pulled from the Red River. Raymond Cormier was charged in that killing, but later was acquitted by a jury. We'll hear from John O'Donovan, who led that investigation, coming up in your news at 6:30.
Thanks, Riley.
No problem.
That's CBC's Riley Laychuk. And joining us now with a look at the weather is Abby Adeyemi. Good morning, Abby.
Good morning, Em. A wet start to Junior Friday here in the city.
Junior Friday!
Yep. And that's the condition across the southern part of the province this morning. A rainy and breezy day ahead with showers this morning into the afternoon period, and then we will be seeing clearing overnight. We're looking at 10 to 20 millimeters of rain coming to Winnipeg and even Brandon throughout today. Right now, Winnipeg, we're at 19 degrees. We're seeing some light rain outside, some cloudy conditions with that also. This period of rain started sometime this morning, and it's going to stay with us for most of the day into the afternoon period. Like I mentioned earlier, between 10 to 20 millimeters are expected, and then by the afternoon period the conditions will turn breezy and we'll be heading for a high of 22. Looking at other parts of the province, we see clouds and showers today with thunderstorm possible in some areas, and the temperatures will be ranging from 13 in Churchill to 26 in Dauphin. Breezy conditions also, and then we will be seeing local smoke that may be affecting some parts of the northern regions. Up north, we have that air quality advisory still in effect due to lingering smoke. Thompson is at 18. Thompson and Churchill actually at 18 at the moment. And if we look down south, we're seeing Brandon at 18 also. And then Dauphin is getting some foggy conditions at 15, while Gimli, Brandon, Steinbach, and Morris hovering near 20 degrees. But right now, we're looking at a bit of a wet day ahead in the city, heading for a high of 19. Heading for a high of 22, right now 19 degrees. And don't forget the umbrella or the raincoat today.
Yes, two people actually just walked by with these big rain ponchos, you know, those ones that hang over everything. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of weather it is.
That's what I would advise for today.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
That's CBC's Abby Adeyemi. And with an update on how the traffic is out on those wet streets of Winnipeg this morning, here's May McKillop.
Good morning, Emily.
Good morning.
I'm actually just noticing that Winnipeg Traffic Management Center just uploaded an alert here on Portage and Woodlawn. There's an MVC that has knocked down a traffic standard.
Oh.
So the remaining lights continue to operate, but people need to use caution when traveling through, and crews are arriving on scene soon, hopefully.
Wow, yeah, that could take a little bit.
Tough start to the
fix
day,
up.
hey?
Yeah, no kidding.
Anything else anyone's seeing out there, please let me know, or if anyone has an update on this spot on Portage and Woodlawn, I'd appreciate hearing about it. Give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Coming Coming up on 6:15, and you're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM in Winnipeg. Also broadcasting live right now on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel, as well on the CBC Listen app and on our website. I'm Emily Brass. When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, Tatiana Harashuk felt hopeless. For starters, the Ukrainian Canadian was in Winnipeg. Also, she wasn't a soldier, but she was an accomplished musician and composer with a deep desire to help. So she went on her own quest, resulting in Voices of Freedom. It's a new documentary with Harashuk and refugees at its heart.
My name is Tatiana Harashuk. I'm a musician, I'm a drummer and a composer. Having moved to Canada when I was 8 years old, I still feel very much more Ukrainian than Canadian.
Війна вплинула, напевно, майже на всіх українців.
I will be gathering stories and then I will be translating these stories into music.
Ну що, війна – це холод, це страх.
I wanted to be like a filter for story. I didn't realize what I was getting into when I started this project.
That was Tatiana Harashuk in a clip from the new documentary Voices of Freedom. She spoke with CBC's Chloe Friesen yesterday on Up to Speed.
Hello.
Hi, Chloe.
So tell us a little more about the documentary Voices of Freedom.
The documentary, it's about fighting to protect and share Ukrainian culture and our current as well as our future story. It's about connecting with those people who are directly affected by the war and expressing their feelings and emotions through music. And it's about understanding war through an artistic lens.
You mentioned, we heard you say in that clip that these stories kind of weren't what you expected when you started this project. What was it like speaking to refugees about their experiences in the war?
It was really hard, and the conversations were very difficult. I had never interviewed anyone before, but all I had to do was ask them to introduce themselves, and then I would ask one question. I would ask, tell me what happened on the morning of February 24th, and they would tell me everything in absolute detail for over an hour, because that day is etched in the minds of all Ukrainians.
Why was it important to you to speak to refugees?
It was really important because when the war started, I felt powerless and was really affected by it, and I felt I had a responsibility to do something. And it's not my story to tell. I was born there, and I am Ukrainian, but I wasn't there, and I was not directly affected. So I decided to search for people who were willing to share their stories, so that I can tell their stories through my music, and to spread Ukrainian culture and keep it alive in this very important moment where people just need to remember who we are and what we're fighting for.
I'm curious, Tatiana, was there one story that you heard that really sticks with you that you think about still today?
Yes, I spoke with a woman who first got involved in 2014 when the revolution at Maidan in Kiev was happening. And she was a volunteer paramedic, and she told me about underground hospitals and treating peaceful protesters when things got violent and aggressive. And she was right there in the middle of everything. And then later, when Russia first invaded Ukraine, eastern Ukraine in 2014, she was there as well, volunteering and experiencing these horrible things.
How did you take those conversations you had with the refugees and translate them into music? I'm so curious.
I took notes of all the interviews, and I kept track of all the ideas that stood out to me, and I just had lots of pages full of information. And then I wanted to connect these ideas, and I wanted to try to see the bigger themes and the bigger concepts, some universal concept that everyone could understand. And so I came up with 7 themes, which are without resources, anxiety, information, dreams, powerless, death, and cherish. And so with these words, what I did was try to make little musical segments And then I would try to work on each musical segment to really build up the character of each theme and really bring it to life and kind of show it in a musical sense.
Have you ever composed that way before, starting with themes and ideas and then figuring out what they sound like?
Very briefly, I had maybe 2 years previous, I had tried doing this, but never to this extent.
Tatiana, what do you hope audiences will take away from Voices of Freedom?
I hope people can open up and be vulnerable, and I hope that they can feel the pain that Ukrainians are feeling. I hope people can ask themselves why this is still happening. I hope they ask themselves why they feel the things that they're feeling when they think about this, and then act based on their feelings, and it doesn't matter how small it is. If you're doing something, you're helping. I want to connect people and to create a community, and I hope people realize that it is everyone's responsibility to do something and to be a citizen of the world and to be an agent of peace.
I know there's an advanced screening of the film happening here in Winnipeg tomorrow. What are you most looking forward to at that event?
I'm really looking forward to reconnecting with people in the community and spreading this I don't know, this thing that we've created and sharing it with people. And I'm excited to get the ball rolling, and I hope this is just the beginning,
Tatiana, I'm curious about what you learned about yourself. I know you were interviewing other people, but what did you learn about yourself as a person, but also as an artist and a composer through this process?
I learned that I'm a very sensitive person, and that I like to connect people and to hear their stories and to try to help in any way. I learned that if I put my mind to it, and it doesn't matter how big the goal is, if I have the intention to do something, then I have to work hard, and I can achieve that goal.
Well, Tatiana, being sensitive is certainly a superpower. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for joining us here on Up to Speed.
Thank you for having me.
That was Tatiana Harashuk speaking with CBC's Chloe Friesen. She's a Winnipeg musician and composer at the heart of Voices of Freedom. That's a new documentary about the struggle of refugees from Ukraine, and it's debuting this Friday. That's tomorrow on CBC Gem. And there's also a free advanced screening tonight in Winnipeg. It's happening at 8 p.m. at the Park Theatre, and for tickets, go to myparktheatre.com.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
23 minutes after 6 o'clock, you're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass. Global public health officials are raising the alarm over the rapid spread of Mpox in Africa. Just yesterday, the World Health Organization declared the disease a public health emergency of international concern. That's the second time in just over 2 years, and it follows a similar announcement the day before from Africa's top public health body about the disease formerly called monkeypox. The WHO says there have been more than 17,000 suspected cases and more than 500 deaths on the African continent just this year. For more, we've reached Dr. Iris Gorfinkel. She's a family physician, clinical researcher, and a regular CBC Radio health contributor. Good morning, Iris.
A warm good morning to you, Emily.
Thank you. So why has the WHO just declared Mpox in Africa a public health emergency of international concern?
Well, the virus has changed. Last year, it was a milder disease. It killed about 1 in 500. Now, it's killing 1 in 30. War in Congo has forced millions out of their homes. They're living in these crowded camps, and that allows the virus to spread. And we've heard this song before: more cases, more variants, or clades, as it were. This is now infecting kids. That's a major change. We're talking kids under 15. That's 3 out of 5 cases. And nearly 9 out of 10 of the deaths have been in children, infants as young as 2 weeks old. And that's putting a lot of pressure on their already overcrowded hospitals. It's also spreading a lot more rapidly. Infections have been reported in 13, that's out of 54 countries in Africa, but almost all the cases concentrate in the Congo. But it has been spreading outside of Africa. That's the big concern.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty alarming. Remind us what Mpox is and how it's transmitted.
So Mpox is a viral infection. So it's spread mainly through touch and sexual contact, skin to skin, oral, genital contact. But people can also get it by touching an infected sheet, towel, or clothing. Pregnant women can pass it on to an unborn baby. And it can also be airborne. So 1 or 2 weeks after coming in contact, what do people get? They get a flu. And you know what? Fever, headache, sore throat, cough. This is hard to diagnose, right? Because it's not going to be Mpox. Chances are it's going to be some other virus. Swollen lymph nodes in the neck, armpits, groin. But here's where it gets a little different. A week later, it goes into a rash. Now, that rash usually starts in the mouth or tongue, but it can start in the anus or rectum before spreading out to the trunk, the arms, and the legs. And we're talking about a painful rash. Little red bumps that turn into pustules. Those pustules, by the way, can be swabbed. That's an opportunity to make the diagnosis. But that whole thing is usually gone within 2 to 4 weeks. But it is contagious from the moment a person has flu-like symptoms until that last scab falls off and gets replaced by new skin.
My gosh, it sounds awful. So the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention declared Mpox a public health emergency for the continent just on Tuesday. So what changes now that the WHO has also declared it a global concern?
They've raised its highest alert level, and it signals that international spread is now possible. This is a cry in the woods. Help us now. Share the vaccines. Share the resources. Help us stamp it out early. That's the translation of it. The changes in the virus are super concerning. It's no longer affecting only gay and bisexual men as it had back in 2022. This new clade is infecting men and women equally, and it's hitting kids especially hard.
You mentioned 2022. That's when an outbreak of Mpox happened in dozens of countries and was contained in wealthy countries, including Canada, where vaccines and public health campaigns encouraged people to avoid risky behavior. But how readily available are vaccines and treatments for Mpox in Africa?
Africa needs 20 million vaccines. How many does it have? 200,000. Even if you added the additional 250,000 vaccines pledged by the U.S. and the European Commission, they need 20 times that number. So Canada, we're sitting on 2 million doses. That's what's in the stockpile. And the Public Health Agency is in talk about just how much they're going to donate. But the last outbreak, really, it wasn't just vaccines that curbed the outbreak in 2022. It was drastic changes in behavior by gay and bisexual men. And of course, the best medicine starts with surveillance and really good data. The virus, as it happens, is excreted in urine and stool up to a week or two before it starts causing symptoms. Wastewater surveillance, that's going to detect the hot spots to allow public health to focus on specific areas to prevent this from spreading.
Iris, we've got less than a minute left, but, before you go, how concerned should we be about Mpox here in Canada?
Well, we've got 93 confirmed cases. But when I say confirmed, that's a canary in the coal mine. Patients can't even get in to see a doctor within that period of time. Many people don't even have a doctor. So yes, we need to be concerned because this is being underdiagnosed. We need to, do educational efforts, aggressively test for it, isolate when people are sick, get tested when there's that rash, think about Mpox so that we can understand where it is and focus on preventing it from becoming an epidemic.
Thanks for joining us this morning and letting us know more about this really pretty alarming situation, Iris.
Many thanks for having me.
That was Dr. Iris Gorfinkel, a family physician, clinical researcher, and health contributor on CBC Radio. Later on in the show, we will be talking to a Manitoba microbiologist who's studying the virus up close. Jason Kinderchuk will share what he learned while he was in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's in the 8 o'clock hour. The news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Riley Lachuk in Winnipeg at 6:30, 18 degrees right now under a rain shower at the moment in Winnipeg. Looking at a rainy day today across the south. 10 to 20 millimeters in Winnipeg. Our high today, 22 degrees. And we have air quality statements in place for Swan River, Grand Rapids into northern Manitoba. We begin this morning with new figures showing Winnipeg's population grew by about 20,000 people over the past year. The city's Economic Development Office says about 816,000 people now live in the Manitoba capital. Newcomers to Canada are the biggest driver of that growth. U of M sociologist Laurie Wilkinson says changes to federal immigration policy could threaten future growth. Both the governing Liberals and opposition Conservatives have linked the housing crisis to high numbers of newcomers.
I'm half a century old, and I've never seen so much anti-immigrant rhetoric and scapegoating of immigrants and international students with regards to housing.
Even with no changes to immigration policy, the city expects population growth to taper off next year. Winnipeg is not expected to get to 1 million people until the year 2046. An Interlake region chief says the province will sign a memorandum of understanding to review a massive flood mitigation project. It comes after a federal government report released in June found the Interlake Flood Channel project would likely harm local Indigenous communities. Lake Manitoba First Nation Chief Cornell McLean says the promise is a long time coming.
Maybe there's an alternative route. Maybe there's something that we missed during the first, round of talks, because there was no consultation, as you know. It was basically rammed down our throats by the former progressive conservative government, and we didn't take that lightly.
The province says in a statement it recognizes the need for flood mitigation in the Interlake and is resetting the relationship with First Nations and rural municipalities. A University of Manitoba criminologist says the research is mixed when it comes to the effectiveness of electronic ankle monitors. The province announced yesterday it will begin using the bracelets to keep track of eligible people who are out on bail. Frank Cormier works in the Department of Sociology and Criminology at the U of M. He says the monitors may help prevent some people from reoffending.
If the technology is working as intended, and if it is being monitored and someone is ready and able to respond immediately, then that certainly could improve the effectiveness, because the response to the breach would be swift, and again, it would be certain.
But Cormier says ankle monitors generally only have a deterrent effect on people who act rationally. The former police sergeant who led the search for Tina Fontaine's killer maintains that they charged the right guy. Saturday will mark 10 years since the 15-year-old's body was pulled from Winnipeg's Red River. Raymond Cormier was charged in that killing, but later was acquitted by a jury. John O'Donovan led the investigation into Fontaine's death. He says secret police recordings didn't capture a fulsome confession from Cormier, but they did catch Cormier describing an instance where he thought he saw Tina Fontaine's ghost.
The one thing that he said, which I found was dynamite, she was even wearing the same white skirt. In all the pictures we put out of Tina, she never wore a white skirt. Unfortunately, the body we took from the river, she was wearing a white skirt.
Cormier died in Ottawa last April. WestJet says flight cancellations are expected to continue for the foreseeable future after planes were damaged by a hailstorm in Calgary last week. It says 16 aircraft remain out of commission, representing about 10% of its fleet. The airline says sourcing specialized equipment to complete repairs and inspections will take several more weeks. WestJet has canceled more than 600 flights since August 5th. Overseas this morning, the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed in the Israel-Hamas war to date. It comes amid new efforts to broker a ceasefire in that conflict, now into its 11th month. Israel, Qatar, Egypt, and the U.S. are all at talks in Doha today, but Hamas is refusing to take part. More national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. And frequent shoppers at one 7-Eleven that could close say it would be a huge loss for the area. Chronic problems with theft and violence have the company thinking of closing 10 Winnipeg locations, among them the location at Salter and Flora. Mallory Amond goes there with her daughter almost daily. She says theft happens regularly. She says if that store closes, the area would have fewer grocery options.
I get where 7-Eleven's coming from of wanting to close their stores, but at the same time, they're taking away business from people that actually want their services.
According to a 7-Eleven internal report, that store at Salter and Flora has experienced more than $320,000 worth of theft. 7-Eleven did not respond to CBC's request for comment yesterday. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thank you, Riley.
No problem.
That's CBC's Riley Lechuk from the Manitoba newsroom. Well, it is now 6:35. Time for another update on the weather with Abby Adiemi.
It is wet outside. Wet. That's what we're seeing. A mix of showers and thunderstorms is expected across the province today, with varying temperatures and breezy conditions to light ones. Most regions will see periods of rain, and of course we're not forgetting the local smoke due to local fire that we are having up north. Winnipeg at 19, light rain still outside. It's cloudy, as you can tell. We'll be seeing about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain by the time this ends, and then it will become breezy with a high of 22. Tomorrow is expected to clear up, and then we'll get to a high of 25. Brandon is at 18. Some fog patches are noticed earlier. They're dissipating as we speak, and then showers possible. Thunderstorms are also expected. We should be seeing about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain for that region, also with breezy conditions at times, and the highs would get close to 24. Moving north to Thompson, where it is 18 degrees at this time. Light rain also in that region. We have that air quality advisory due to local smoke. We're expecting cloudy conditions to stay with this showers and thunderstorm that we're noticing for Thompson. The highs would touch 24. Further north in Churchill, it's also partly cloudy at this time. 19 degrees, air quality advisory in effect. We should expect these cloudy conditions with showers and the risk of thunderstorm for that region. High around 13. For that region, and then the showers will be tapering off, leaving cloudy skies for tonight. Dauphin is at 15 and foggy at this time. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds with fog clearing, and then a slight chance of showers and thunderstorms. It will feel breezy. Highs will be around 26. Tonight we'll see clear skies. Gimli at 20 and cloudy. Showers also in the forecast for the Interlake region today. We're expecting about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. Breezy conditions are anticipated, and the highs near 22, 23. Steinbach is seeing some cloudy conditions at this time, with showers also, or some light rain being felt at 18 degrees. Heavier rainfall near the American border, and then we'll be getting to about a high of 21. Currently, Maurice is at 19 degrees. Today's forecast for the Pembina Valley region calls for about 20 to 30 millimeters of showers, and then it might even get up to 50 by the time the rain tapers off. We're expecting breezy conditions to come with that, and we'll be seeing highs near 22. But for tonight, the showers would end and then leaving cloudy skies. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 19.
And we're getting a good bit of rain out there, Abby.
Oh, there it is now.
Yeah, no kidding. And, I took a chance and I did not water my plants last night, and I'm so glad I didn't.
So the plants are going to get, enough attention today.
Yeah, I think they love this. So good weather for plants. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
That's CBC's Abby Adiemi. He's also our studio technician. And with me in the studio right now is May McKillop. She's our show director, and she has a look at the traffic.
Hey, Emily. It's
Hi.
not great weather for traffic, unfortunately.
Yeah.
No. John called from Brandon. He's on his way to Brandon from eastbound from the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border on Highway number 1, and he says it's really foggy.
I bet it is. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
a lot of humidity right now.
Absolutely. So stay safe out there, John. We also are looking at a spot downtown here in Winnipeg on Portage and Woodlawn. An MVC has knocked down a traffic standard. The remaining lights are still operating. This was reported at about 6 a.m. when crews were supposed to be on scene soon. So hopefully there's people there directing traffic. If anyone wants to give me an update on that or anything else that they're seeing in their commute, let me know. 204-788-3093.
Thank you, May. That's May McKillop joining us with the traffic. She's going to keep an eye on things and, give her a call if you see anything else going wrong out there on the commute. Well, it's coming up on 20 minutes before 7 o'clock. Time for a look at business news. Crystalie Ramlakan joins us with the CBC Business Report. Hi, Crystalie.
Hey, good morning, Emily.
All right, so two very large snack companies are merging. What can you tell us about the deal?
Yes, so Mars, the company behind M&M's and Snickers, has agreed to buy Kellanova. That's the snack food business spun off by Kellogg's last year. So the $36 billion deal will create a new global food giant. And the acquisition is one of the largest food deals in years and will give Mars even more negotiating power with retailers. So Kellanova owns a number of brands, including Cheez-It, Pringles, and Eggo. And Mars is trying to move beyond the sweet treats it's known for. So in 2020, it bought Kind North America. That's the company that makes Kind bars. And it's investing in its pet business, which includes the pet food brand Iams. Jordan LaBelle is a professor of food marketing at Concordia University. And he says Mars has been trying to expand its snack portfolio.
Snacking is where it's at right now. Consumers' consumption behavior is changing. Instead of 3 square meals a day eaten together, we're seeing consumers doing more asynchronous meal. Everybody's doing their own little thing, even in a family of 3, 4, 5 people. And snack has become sort of the new mode of consumption.
But the deal comes at a tenuous time for food and beverage manufacturers. For more than 2 years, companies have steadily increased prices, partly to cover higher commodity and labor costs, but of course also to expand their profit margins. And now some consumers are pushing back, either buying less or trading down to generic brands.
Interesting. Okay, moving now to telecom news. Chorus is accusing Rogers of predatory behavior. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, so Chorus Entertainment has filed a complaint with the country's broadcasting regulator that alleges Rogers is trying to suppress potential competition. And Chorus is asking for regulatory intervention to prevent what they call a significant adverse impact to the television and radio broadcaster. So Chorus alleges that Rogers is using its dominant size and scale to undercut Canadian competitors through rights deals to foreign programming. So it pointed to deals with Warner Brothers Discovery for the rights to its popular lifestyle and entertainment brands and NBC Universal Media's Bravo channel. So Rogers' multi-year deal with Warner Brothers Discovery will take effect on January 1st, and this marks a significant blow to Chorus, which is set to lose the Canadian rights to key brands such as HGTV, the Food Network, the Cooking Channel, and OWN at the end of this year. And Chorus is also accusing Rogers of using its cable and streaming platforms to discourage subscriptions to Chorus content, such as its Disney-themed channels, by offering promotions for the Disney Plus streaming service. Now, Rogers calls the complaint baseless and says Chorus has not kept up with the demands of Canadians and is now looking for the regulator to protect their broken business model. And Chorus reported losses last month, and it does expect to have cut up to a quarter of its full-time workforce by the end of this month.
Okay. And moving now to advertising, why could we soon see even more ads featuring actors' voices?
Well, that's because the union that represents Hollywood actors has made a deal for advertisers to replicate actors' voices with artificial intelligence. So the deal enables actors to sell advertisers rights to replicate their voices. And as performers fear AI will make theft of their likeness more common, the agreement seeks to ensure actors get income from the technology and have control over how and when their voices are used. So an actor can set the price for an advertiser to replicate their voice as long as it's the union minimum pay for audio commercials, and brands must obtain consent for each ad that uses the voice replica. Now, the union says this sets a standard for the ethical use of AI-generated voice replicas in advertising. Of course, we remember actress Scarlett Johansson drew attention to the perils of AI earlier this year when she accused OpenAI of copying her voice for its conversational AI system. And Emily, this technology was also a key issue in last year's Hollywood strike.
There's so much territory that needs to be decided over AI. This is going to continue. So what's happening so far in the markets this morning, Crystal?
In Europe, stocks are higher as investors digest cooler than expected inflation readings in the US and UK. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is down. In Asia, markets are largely on the rise after Japan's GDP growth beat expectations. So Japan is up, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is down. Oil is up 76 cents to 77.74 US per barrel. Gold is up $16.50 to $2,496.30 US per ounce, and the dollar is up 0.05 of a cent to 73 cents US.
Thank you so much, Crystal Lee.
Thanks, Emily.
That was Crystal Lee Ramlakan with the CBC Business News. It's 6:45, 18 degrees with rain at the Winnipeg airport right now. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass, and you're listening on 89.3 FM and 990 AM in Winnipeg. Or maybe you're checking us out on our YouTube channel, our CBC Manitoba channel. We're broadcasting live right now. You can also check us out on the CBC Listen app and on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, nowadays you can generally return an item you bought for a full refund if you don't like it. But for many years, big retailers have had a no questions asked return policy. As personal finance columnist Rubina Ahmed Haq reports, those generous programs are changing.
As a teenager, I worked at a store that had a customer is always right return policy. One day, I saw a woman bring back a pair of jean shorts that she had purchased last year and worn all summer. But now she complained they didn't fit her and she didn't want them anymore. According to our policy, we let her exchange them for a new pair that was her new size. Her old shorts went in the trash. But that company didn't have to do that. Return policies in Canada have always been voluntary. According to the Federal Office of Consumer Affairs, businesses are not obligated to accept a return of an item unless it's defective. But despite this, many big retailers have offered generous return policies. Some have a no questions asked rule, like the jean store I worked in. But that may be changing, and consumers should be aware.
What you're seeing right now is, retailers are under a lot of pressure from many fronts. There's a lot of cost increases.
Jason Vickers is a partner and national retail transformation leader at Deloitte. He says the trend of generous return policies ramped up when more consumers started shopping online. You can't try an item on or see it in real life, so making it easy to return helps a customer buy it with confidence. If they don't like it, they can just send it back. But this is now hurting many retailers' bottom lines, and that cost is being passed on in the form of higher consumer prices.
It's a fairly meaningful amount of activity. I'll start with that. It really depends on the category, but in certain categories like apparel, returns can be 20 to 30% of products bought online can be returned.
Now return policies at major retailers are changing. Amazon is charging customers to return some items. Walmart is shrinking the time you can return large appliances. Winners and its partners are shortening the window you can return an item unless you are part of their loyalty program. Vickers says return policies at brick and mortar stores have been generous for years, but the abuse was lower. Online shopping has ramped up the number of returns, and this is hurting a company's profits and also having an environmental impact.
Retailers do everything they can to, get that product back on shelves, but Along the way, there's spoilage, there's damage. Sometimes the inventory gets out of balance. You've got it returned to one store, but they don't need that size or color. So it's actually very complex. And in a lot of cases, products that are returned just end up getting, destroyed or sold through, a heavily discounted channels.
Well, for a lot of small businesses, it would be welcome news to see some of the larger companies tighten their returns policy.
Dan Kelly is president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. He says big retailers' generous return policies have always hurt small businesses that can't offer the same. He says this will make the process fairer between small and big retailers.
Small businesses want to make their customers happy, and they do everything they can to try to satisfy them. The challenge is there are practical limits. Small firms don't have the clout to be able to just push the cost back to somebody else.
As a consumer, the experts say you should be asking more specific questions if you suspect you may want to return something. Questions like, how long do I have to bring this back? Does it have to be at the same location? Is there any way to extend my return window? But most importantly, before you buy, be sure you want it, because it's still up to the company if they are willing to take it back or not. And as a former retail salesperson for optics, use the same bag you bought it in and make sure it's in new condition. For CBC Radio, I'm Rubina Ahmed-Haq.
For breaking news as it happens, stay with CBC News. For the latest updates and what it means for Canadians, stay with CBC News. When the biggest stories break, both at home and around the world, stay with CBC News.
Well, it is now 10 minutes before 7 o'clock. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass. A new round of ceasefire talks have started in Qatar in hopes of bringing an end to Israel's bombing of Gaza and a broader stability to the region. The Gaza Health Ministry has reported 40,000 people have died over the last 10 months, with 15,000 of those being children. Joining us now is Patrick Robitaille, Senior Advisor of Policy and Government Relations for Save the Children Canada. Hi, Patrick.
Good morning.
So what are the greatest concerns right now for the people of Gaza?
Safety. Right now, there's continued attack every day. I mean, just last weekend, we saw a massive attack on schools where where families were dying. And it's a huge concern for Save the Children. When we're thinking of children, they have 7 times more chances to be killed when there's explosive weapons that are shot, and those are huge explosions in very densely populated areas. And it's very hard to hear, but the children have less blood. Their bones are bend more easily, and they are thrown harder and faster across rooms. So that's why we are seeing a lot of casualties. And the majority of those children, it's not only the explosive, they are displaced, so they need everything. And right now, with little aid that is coming in, children are dying every single day due to lack of medical assistance, due to lack of clean water, lack of food. So it's really a nightmare in Gaza right now.
And for families, I mean, are there other factors that are maybe making them more vulnerable?
Well, yeah, the children are currently not only displaced, but they lost one parent, 2 parents, sometimes their entire family. There's 17,000 children that are separated or unaccompanied right now, and there's no safety net for them. So it's very difficult for aid agency to provide the basic support that they need, such as psychological health care, and have safe spaces to be in. So we're really concerned when it comes to children. There's big question marks of what's going to happen for the unaccompanied children, and every day that is passing is really critical.
Yeah. In fact, many children are now being described as WCNSF, which means Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. What might be done to make sure these children are looked after?
I mean, it's critical that there's a ceasefire, that bombing are stopping. it is we need to provide them access to that safety net I'm talking about, and to schools. There's no schools that are not either partly or totally destroyed right now. There's no school going on with all of those public buildings to be sheltering the displaced people. So kids cannot be kids. They cannot play. Their background and their whole community have been destroyed. So we need to restore the safety for them and places for them to be able to play and recover from the trauma.
And how about the food and medical supplies? How much of that aid is getting to where it's needed?
It's only a fraction. It's a very small fraction. The last 10 months, we've been trying to get water purification devices, clothes, food, and all of them have been denied or just trickling in. Right now we have pallets of critical medical supplies that are waiting at the border and cannot come in. And we're just lining up with many aid agencies that are trying to bring the material in. And it's not only bringing it in Gaza, but it's also to be able to distribute it. It's extremely difficult to go around. There's denied of a lot of the convoys within Gaza, and it's unsafe for distribution. There's 280 aid workers that have been killed, majority of them being Palestinian. So it's extremely difficult to be able to provide the medical equipment that the hospitals are needing, and the doctors are just unable to respond to the injuries and all of the needs that are arising in Gaza right now.
And another need is polio that's now been detected in Gaza. What's being done to get vaccines to children for that?
Well, there's been basically no vaccination. There's been 50,000 children that have been born in the last 10 months in Gaza. And we know we are needing to vaccinate children, and for that you need cold storage facilities. So right now we are losing the vaccines at the border, and the medical system is unable to organize those vaccination. So that's really critical right now that we are restarting vaccination, because we're going to see those epidemics. And moreover, the mothers that are giving birth to these children are sent back immediately to the shelters where they are, and there's no sanitary facilities there. It's overcrowded, and that's not a place for infants to be born into. So this is why we're going to see more of those spread of disease in Gaza, and the system is not able to cope with that.
And just in our last minute here, Patrick, it's a big question. What sort of long-term issues will children live with after the bombing stops?
The trauma that children are having today, that will last for generations to come. There's nothing we've seen of that magnitude. Not only that they lost their parents and their family, it's the whole community that have been destroyed. And so we need to see a restoration of schools, infrastructures, social infrastructures, and without a ceasefire, with countries like Canada continuing to send weapons in, the conflict is just fueling this war and fueling a trauma that will last for many generations to come.
Very sad. Well, thanks for joining us to explain, Patrick.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Patrick Robitaille is Senior Advisor of Policy and Government Relations for Save the Children Canada. Joining us now in studio is Riley Lachuk with a look at the CBC Manitoba headlines.
Good morning. An Interlake Regional Chief says it feels like First Nations in his area are finally being heard. This after he says the province promised to sign an agreement to review plans for a massive flood mitigation project in the region. Lake Manitoba Chief Cornell McLean says he was encouraged after meeting with the Premier and other chiefs this week. And it wasn't a weather delay, but a wildlife delay. The Winnipeg Goldeyes home game last night delayed after a flock of geese made themselves at home on the field mid-game. We'll bring you that story coming up after World Report.
Well, it's a perfectly nice place to hang out there.
Perfectly nice Manitoba story as well.
What's the problem?
Exactly.
The geese are like, this is great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Riley.
No problem.
That's CBC's Riley Lachuk. Well, it's cloudy out there, rainy as well right now, 19 degrees at the Forks in Winnipeg, and they're going to get 10 to 20 millimeters are expected today. Pretty breezy as well with a high of 22. 27 is how it'll feel with the humidex. It's still to come on the next hour of the show. Big changes are coming to the Gas Station Arts Center. The theater is making improvements to help draw more people to the Osborne Village venue. We're going to speak to the theater's executive director about those plans. That's coming up in the next hour of Information Radio. World Report is up next.
On the Current.
And we only get paid straight per hour. We don't get paid overtime.
I'm Susan Bonner. A UN report calls Canada's temporary foreign workers program a breeding ground for slavery, saying it cuts costs for companies but exploits vulnerable workers. How businesses came to rely on this push to low wages on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. Ceasefire negotiations aimed at ending the Israel-Hamas war are supposed to resume today in Doha. In Tel Aviv, the families of hostages are telling Israeli negotiators to get the deal done. Any ceasefire deal would include an exchange of hostages for Palestinians being held prisoner in Israel. This man's uncle is being held hostage in Gaza.
We need a ceasefire to get them all back. We cannot trust the Israeli government anymore. It has been torpedoing any effort to get a deal for the past 10 months.
Hamas looks unlikely to even send negotiators to Qatar today. The group is run by hardliners now that its political leader has been assassinated. It says it is losing faith in the United States' ability to mediate a deal. Across India, another night of protests. Tens of thousands of people marched through the streets demanding justice for a trainee doctor. She was sexually assaulted and murdered at a Calcutta hospital. This morning, India's Prime Minister says stricter punishment needs to be put in place for crimes against women. Ishan Garg reports.
We will not tolerate violence against doctors, chants a crowd of protesters. But a peaceful demonstration like this turned into a night-long struggle between crowds and the police on Thursday. A mob of hundreds barged into the R.G. Kar Medical College in Kolkata after midnight. They ransacked offices, destroyed public property, and broke through police barricades, forcing officials to fire tear gas shells to disperse the crowd. The teaching hospital is where a 31-year-old trainee doctor was raped and murdered after falling asleep at the end of a long shift. It's now ground zero of a nationwide doctors' strike that has crippled the country's medical infrastructure. Medical professionals are demanding better security at the college. A volunteer hospital worker has been arrested in the case, but there's been criticism of how local police handled the crime scene. India's top federal investigative agency, the CBI, has now taken over the case from state police, with officials saying it was necessary to restore the public's confidence in the justice system. Addressing the nation on India's Independence Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he shares people's anger. Modi added that officials need to investigate swiftly and punish the perpetrators. Ishan Garg for CBC News, New Delhi.
Рассмотрев в закрытом судебном заседании уголовное дело в отношении Карелиной Ксении Павловны, обвиняемой в совершении преступлений, предусмотренных...
A Russian judge reads Ksenia Karelina her sentence. The Russian-American woman was convicted on treason charges and sentenced to 12 years in jail. The charges are based on a $51 donation she made to a charity supporting Ukraine in February 2022. Karelina, who lives in Los Angeles, was arrested during a visit to Russia to see her family. She pleaded guilty in a closed trial last week. The White House says U.S. taxpayers will save roughly $6 billion on drugs thanks to a new Medicare deal. The Biden administration has made deals with drug companies to lower the price for 10 different prescription drugs. They include some of the most popular and expensive drugs used to treat blood pressure and diabetes. Exact details are still not public, but this is a landmark deal for the Medicare program. It provides health care coverage for more than 67 million Americans who are older or have a disability. U.S. election campaigning is moving into high gear. Both the Democrats and Republicans are trying to poke holes in each other's policies. For Kamala Harris, her opponents focused on her track record with climate and the economy. Susan Ormiston traveled to Republican VP candidate J.D. Vance's hometown to take the temperature of Midwest voters. She has more from Middletown, Ohio.
J.D. Vance running for U.S. Vice President and a son of Middletown, Ohio, an industrial city built on steel in a county proudly Republican. And Vance is taking aim at the Biden-Harris green energy investments.
A radical left-wing spending wish list, which spent millions and billions of dollars on green energy scams.
But Vance's hometown stands to gain from President Biden's climate and infrastructure monies, with over $500 million awarded to the local Cleveland Cliffs steel plant to replace its old blast furnace with electric ones. When completed, slashing carbon emissions, says Tim Furtick of the Blue-Green Alliance.
This investment has to be seen as contributing to the long-term competitiveness of the iron and steel industry in the U.S., and therefore to the long-term job security and livelihoods of the workers.
But Vance and Trump are carving out a climate wedge in this election in favor of even more oil production.
We will drill, baby, drill.
And with his running mate now accusing Harris of stifling the economy.
That makes Kamala Harris directly responsible for this inflation disaster.
Harris is set to lay out her economic plan on Friday. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Middletown, Ohio.
For the first time ever, half of all cars sold in China last month were electric or plug-in hybrids. That is a key milestone in the world's biggest auto market and is exceeding sales of those vehicles in Canada. Lisa Shing reports.
I think it's a pretty big moment.
For Corey Cantor, Senior Associate for EVs at research organization Bloomberg NEF, China is outperforming expectations.
And we had China on an annual level surpassing 50% EV share of sale in 2026.
Now, 2 years ahead of time, at least for the month of July, 50.7% of all cars sold there were either electric or plug-in hybrid. That's according to data from the China Passenger Car Association. The only other country that's surpassed that milestone is Norway. New energy vehicles are really stepping up their game, says car buyer Gulei in Chengdu, Sichuan province. There are promotions online. I'm drawn to the high-tech features and they're energy efficient, which is a big plus. For about a decade, China has fostered the environment for EVs to thrive, from government subsidies to manufacturing batteries, according to auto consultant Jingyi Zhang.
All the infrastructure make this happen. Our supply chains also support such fast growth compared to the other market around the world.
In Canada, new zero-emission car registrations are hovering around the 10% mark. That may not go up anytime soon, as the federal government is under pressure to hike tariffs on cheaper Chinese EVs and parts, while speeding up the creation of its own manufacturing industry, something that could still be many years down the road. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Taylor Swift's Eras Tour gets back on track in London tonight, and security is on high alert. Her last 3 shows in Vienna were cancelled by authorities trying to prevent an alleged terror attack. Anna Cunningham is outside Wembley Stadium this morning.
London commuters mingling with eager Swifties, amongst them Canadians from London, Ontario, still hoping to get tickets.
Being able to be here and having the opportunity to get these tickets is just so exciting. And yeah, I'm just a huge fan.
Yeah, like she's been a big part of like my childhood growing up, so it's like very like nerve-wracking of seeing if we're going to get tickets or not.
The Baxter family travelled from New Brunswick especially to see Taylor Swift in London. Katie Baxter and her mum Sharon say it's reassuring to see extra security.
It feels safe and secure, yeah. And even last night we came to get our merch at like the big mega store, and there was security around checking our bags even before we went in there, so it feels pretty safe.
We say if they're bringing in more security, that's great.
One thing that's not being allowed here at Wembley is so-called tailgating, when ticketless fans gather in their thousands outside venues to sing along and soak up the atmosphere.
You know, Wembley's our national stadium, and it is absolutely no stranger to international events.
Security expert Nick Aldworth is the UK's former counter-terrorism national coordinator. He says Wembley is ready.
We do know that terrorists like to attack crowded places. And of course, if we start creating crowded places outside stadiums, then we do potentially correct targets.
British police say there's no particular threat, but they're taking no risks for these final concerts of the European leg of Taylor Swift's Eras tour. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. You can listen to us live every morning on the CBC News app. Just tap on the local icon. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1 on this wet and soggy Thursday morning in Winnipeg. I'm Emily Brass. Marcy Marcusa's on vacation this week. Here's what's coming up on this hour of the show. Canadian rock legends Blue Rodeo are set to play Winnipeg, and we're going to talk with the frontman and band co-founder Jim Cuddy ahead of their Burt Block Party performance. 10 years on, what have we learned from the brutal murder of 15-year-old Tina Fontaine? We're going to hear from the lead investigator who searched for her killer. That's coming up at 7:50. But first, the Gas Station Arts Centre is in the midst of a serious revitalization. For starters, the storied theatre in the heart of Osborne Village has installed brand new seats. That's great news. And it's not the only change coming. Stick around. We'll hear more on Information Radio. 11 minutes after 7 o'clock, time for news headlines with Riley Lachuk.
Good morning. An Interlake regional chief says he feels like First Nations in his area are finally being heard. This after he says the province promised to sign an agreement to review plans for a massive flood mitigation project. Lake Manitoba Chief Cornell McLean says he was encouraged after a meeting with the Premier and other chiefs this week. And new figures show Winnipeg's population grew by about 20,000 people in the past year. The city says about 816,000 people now call the Manitoba capital home. Newcomers are the biggest driver of that growth. We'll get a full report from the CBC's Bartley Kivas coming up at 7:30.
Thank you, Riley.
No problem.
That's Riley Lachuk from the CBC Manitoba News Desk. And taking a look at this wet weather this morning is Abby Adiemi.
Yeah, we started the day wet, and that's the condition at the moment outside. Wet starts in Winnipeg. We're looking at 10 to 20 millimeters of rain coming to Winnipeg throughout the day. Similar conditions across southern Manitoba this morning. Currently 19 degrees. You see this rainy and breezy day ahead of us is expected to stay through the morning into the afternoon, and then we'll see some clearing overnight. Rainfall amounts, as mentioned, could range between 10 to 20 millimeters, and the wind will peak up, becoming breezy this afternoon, and we should be seeing highs near 22. In other regions, it's going to be a mix of showers and thunderstorm expected in most regions, with varying temperatures and breezy to light conditions. And and most regions will see the rain come through, and then local smoke is also being felt in the northern part of the province, where we have this air quality adverse rain effect for Thompson and Churchill due to lingering smoke. Currently, it is 18 degrees up there. We're seeing a misty conditions in Thompson at this time and light rain in Churchill, both hovering near 18 degrees. Brandon is also seeing light rain showers at 18 degrees and fog patches being felt here and there, which should be dissipating, but that might affect your commute this morning, so look out for that. And Brandon is looking at up to 20 millimeters of rain today. Dauphin is also seeing fog patches dissipating this morning at 15. And Gimli, Steinbach, Morris all seeing light showers, and the temperature is close to 20 degrees. We're just looking at a wet day across board this morning, and we should be seeing highs near the 2022s.
I hope the rain helps with some of the wildfires and the smoke and stuff.
Yeah, true. And don't forget your raincoats. Very, very important.
Yes, I brought my umbrella. Thank you so much, Abby.
Thank you.
That's CBC's Abby Adeyemi covering the provincial weather forecast for us this morning. And now looking at the roads here in Winnipeg, here's May McKillop. How's it going out there?
It's going pretty good. I'm getting a lot of calls. I think this weather is affecting the roads a little bit and people's commute. One spot that I'm hearing about from a few different people is an accident on Archibald and Provencher. So that's affecting both northbound and southbound Archibald. Both are down to one lane, the curb lane, and there's no crews on site directing traffic yet. As well, there's two spots with traffic light collisions. The first is eastbound Logan and King Street. Tim called to let us know there's a crew on site directing traffic there. And the second is a traffic standard down at Portage and Woodlawn. And hello to our listeners in East Manitoba. Yeah, John called to say that he's driving eastbound on Highway number 1 from the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border. And he says it's really, really foggy out there. So anyone driving that highway, please be cautious for that.
Sounds like the conditions are kind of rough out there for driving.
It's affecting us. This is the busiest commuter morning we've had. Yeah. So I hope everyone's staying safe out there. If you want to let us know about anything, give us a call, 204-788-3093.
It's 7:15. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM in Winnipeg. You can also hear us on the CBC Listen app and on our website. And we're broadcasting live on YouTube on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. I'm Emily Brass. Well, you know that feeling when you're trying to enjoy a comedy show or a dance performance, but the seat you're in is so uncomfortable, it's a little distracting. Well, that's how it used to be for some in the audience at the Gas Station Arts Centre, but not anymore. The theater has been decked out with all new seats, and a lot more changes are planned to make the venue even better. Joining us now is Nick Kowalczyk, Executive Director of the Gas Station Arts Centre. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
So let's start with those seats. Maybe you can describe what they were like before and what they're like now?
Well, they were metal reclining seats that were starting to break and wear, and obviously the cushions were replaced over and over and over again. But now we've got these modern, brand new, very comfortable seats.
In fact, that's something you wanted to do a long time, isn't it? Like change out the seats. Tell us about that.
Yeah, ever since I started about 15 years ago at the theater, that was something that was needing to be done. The seats are now, before we removed them, they were in the theater for 40 years, and they were used when they came in. So they were breaking, and it was just frustrating for also a little bit noisy too, and it was just the kind of thing that will benefit the viewing experience, right? Having a comfortable seat.
Mm-hmm. And like you touched on, you wanted to change them out for quite a while now. How were you finally able to make it happen?
Well, we were lucky enough that we received provincial funds to upgrade our theater, and then we had Deborah Gray come in and support us, philanthropic donor who is there for the theater, and so it's so wonderful that with that support, we're able to do that.
How generous. That's great. So there are many more changes planned for both inside and outside the venue. What other changes might the audience notice inside the Arts Centre in the future?
Well, we've started a little bit in the lobby. We replaced all the lighting in the lobby, and so when you walk in, the lighting will be much better, and then the theater. We've got new carpeting, obviously, before we put in the new seats, new carpeting and the new seating. So once you enter the theater, it looks like a brand new theater. It's such a change, and so we're so excited by that. But then we'll upgrade the lobby, and then we'll upgrade the courtyard in the next few years.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, you're changing like how the entrance is going to work?
Yeah, so we want to better utilize our courtyard, and we're making the entranceway kind of where you would enter in through Subway. And so we would enter in from that corner of the River and Osborne corner, and then come in through that way and get into the lobby right away once you come in, and then you'd be into the lobby of the theater. And then what we'll do is we're planning to upgrade the washrooms, obviously, and all the carpet and the walls and everything, and reorient our office slightly, and so again making the lobby possibly twice the size of it is.
Wow, big changes. You'll be right on that corner instead of kind of pushed off to the east a bit. How about outside? Like, what other changes will be happening outside the venue?
Well, we're excited by that in that sense that we're going to utilize what I believe the full courtyard. Right now, we're just utilizing just the portion in front of the windows of the lobby. So this way, we'll use the whole corner, and we'll add some more greenery. Unfortunately, we may lose some of the greenery, but we won't have fewer trees than we have now. And but we'll add some boulders and different textures for again making it a pleasant patio.
Mm-hmm. And you're also putting up a permanent fence around the patio. Why are you doing that?
Well, again, that's what we feel that having privacy when you're attending an event, and if you're having a patio event, you want to be able to have a bit of privacy, so that'll help. It's again part of the liquor licensing that you need to kind of encompass the area and keep it enclosed, and so it's that experience that we want to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in fact, you mentioned expanding into Subway at River and Osborne. As we've seen in the news, that restaurant, which is your tenant in the building, has had problems with theft and violence. It's planning to move out later this year. How are things in Osborne Village these days? And is the fence part of that? When it comes to crime, how are things going in Osborne Village?
Well, it's an ebb and flow in any community. We've had community policing throughout the summer, and we started that in the spring, and it's been fabulous. It's been great, and so as long as we can continue that's really nice. I mean, Winnipeg is struggling right now, as you're fully aware of some of the crime and the homelessness, and so it's the thing that the mayor, the premier, they're all addressing, and slowly but surely it'll have an upswing in the village and the rest of the city.
Yeah, in fact, you touched on that community policing. We know about the retail theft initiative, which has put more police on foot patrols in Osborne Village and some other parts of the city. Has that had an effect?
Yeah, it has. We see more people who live in the area walking around, and so as the cultural hub of Osborne Village, it's important for us to have a positive outlook and encourage people to come out and come to events at the theater, and then come down to Osborne Village. The more that we have activity going on, then the better it is for us.
Mm-hmm. And so for people who are hearing about all these wonderful changes, the new seats, the new patio, maybe they're thinking about coming down to the gas station arts center for a show. What's on the lineup for them?
Well, we've got our usual gang that are coming back in September. We've got African Movie Festival, Real Pride Film Festival, Nafro Dance in November. We have Michael Delamont coming and using our facility in November, so the Fringe fans are excited by that. Obviously, we have our Improv Festival in October. We've got a couple of initiatives that we're doing. Again, we're going to have, because we've been kind of closed for the summer with renovations, we're going to have a patio September 5th. So we can talk about and show people some of the theater, and then also on September 19th, we're going to do a tequila tasting. So it's a bit of a fundraiser for us. Again, we have to raise a lot of money to complete this, and so this is a start in getting show people what we want to do out into the courtyard and into the lobby, and then raise some funds as well.
Well, thanks so much for joining us early this morning, Nick.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Nick Kowalczyk is Executive Director of the Gas Station Arts Center in Osborne Village.
Actual results may vary. Do not expose to rain. Batteries not included. Keep away from flame. Any resemblance to a real person is purely coincidental. May explode or leak. If enhancement lasts more than 4 hours, see your doctor. Do not try this at home. Remove child before washing. May cause looseness. Subject to change without notice. Do not use while sleeping. Some parts not included. Do not iron clothes on body. No purchase necessary. Do not put swab into your ear. Fine print and advertising disclaimers on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
Coming up on 25 minutes after 7 o'clock, you're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. We were just talking about all the great entertainment coming up this fall at the Gas Station Arts Center. Well, there's also an outdoor block party that's going to rock Winnipeg streets later this month. And one of the bands is Canadian rock royalty Blue Rodeo's Jim Cuddy is going to join us to talk about the band, the party, what he's been up to. That's coming up at 7:40. Well, now it's time for some sports news, and Paul McGowan joins us from the CBC Sports Desk. Good morning, Paul.
Hi, Emily.
So let's start with the Blue Bombers. They continue to get set for Sunday's matchup against the Lions.
Yeah, and a team they shut out the last time they played on August 1st. Of course, one big difference between that game and this one is who is under center for the Leos. Nathan Rourke back in Vancouver and taking first-team reps for the Lions yesterday. Defensive coordinator Jordan Younger was asked if he's expecting anything different from BC given the change at quarterback.
Man, I think they're going to be the same, offense. Like, number one scoring offense in the league. Like, they've been scoring a lot of points, right? It's just a different guy throwing the ball. Of course, they'll have a few new wrinkles for us, like based on the outcome of the last game. But, ultimately, I don't think Tigers changed their stripes. All we take into account there is, okay, what is this guy good at? All right, and just be conscious of that as we move.
Couple of other notes. Kenny Lawler, also a full participant in practice. Looks like he should be ready to go on Sunday. Also, kicker Sergio Castillo missed practice but should be available to play.
All right, well, let's move over to tennis. A couple of Canadians went through to round 2 at the Cincinnati Open. What happened there?
Well, one of those Canadians, a bronze medalist from Paris, Felix Auger-Aliassime, onto the second round, and he will face one of the players that he bested at the Olympics in Norwegian Casper Ruud. On the women's side, Leylah Fernandez through to the second round in singles. She's also playing doubles, though, and in Cincinnati, she's playing with Russian Yulia Putintseva. But last week at the Canadian Open, she was playing with her sister Bianca, and she talked about the two of them finally getting to spend some time together.
I haven't seen my sister all year. Having her there was super fun. Last night we're actually sharing a room, so we are talking smack about each other every minute, but she's an extra set of eyes. Today my dad had a meeting, so he had to leave, unfortunately, and my sister was able to kind of take over, and I was surprised that she could. So it was great to have her support there and her calm mentality helping me out.
I love that the last sentence so perfectly illustrates those family dynamics. Leylah managing to both talk smack and then praise her sister all in the span of about 3 seconds. Fernandez with 2 games today, second round singles match first, and then a doubles match later in the day.
Everyone with siblings knows what that's like, Paul.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's finish on baseball and some history made last night by Aaron Judge.
And look, I generally hate talking about the Yankees, but what Aaron Judge has done over the last few seasons is amazing. Broke Roger Maris's home run mark a couple of years ago, and then last night becomes the fastest player ever to hit 300 home runs. He does it in 132 fewer games than previous record holder Ralph Kiner. Also does it in 400 fewer at-bats than Babe Ruth. Judge was asked what it's like to be in that kind of company.
It's tough to say. Those are some guys that have done a lot of great things in this game, and you throw around a lot of those names to even people that don't know baseball and they know who they are. It's a special group to be in, so it's just an honor to be in the same category as them and mentioned in the same sentence. So hopefully we keep doing some things to stay in the likeness of them.
And the interesting thing about this mark is that, I mentioned Ralph Kiner, who is now the second fastest player to hit 300 home runs. The next two guys on that list, Ryan Howard and Juan Gonzalez, those guys are not in the Hall of Fame. So no guarantees that Judge continues this pace, but he's certainly been fun to watch over the last couple of years.
Wow, really exciting. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks, Emily.
That's Paul McGowan, who was joining us from the CBC Sports Desk in Toronto. Well, we're coming up on local news time. Quick look at the forecast before we go. In Winnipeg today, cloudy, a few showers. Of course, that's already coming down right now. 10 to 20 millimeters expected and breezy with a high of 22. A few showers ending this evening, then mainly cloudy, breezy with a low of 16. And for tomorrow, Friday, clearing, local smoke late in the morning and in the afternoon, breezy with a high of 25. In Brandon, showers today, risk of a thunderstorm, 10 to 20 millimeters expected there too. Fog patches, but those should be breaking up this morning. Breezy, high 24. Cloudy tonight with a chance of showers early in the evening, then partly cloudy, risk of a thunderstorm and some local smoke. The breeze is going to become light with a low of 16. And for tomorrow, widespread smoke in Brandon. And the wind is going to be pretty breezy, high 24, and then with the humidex, it's going to feel like 30 in Brandon. So get ready for that. Still to come on this next half hour of the show, Canadian rock legends Blue Rodeo are set to play Winnipeg, and we're going to talk to frontman and band co-founder Jim Cuddy. That's ahead of their Burt Block Party performance that's coming up next week. Now we're coming up on local news. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Riley Lachuk. At 7:30, it is 18 degrees in Winnipeg. A steady rain here in the downtown right now. We're looking at a rainy day today. An air quality advisory in place as well for Swan River, Grand Rapids, and North. We're looking at a high in the city today and really across southern Manitoba in the low 20s. Winnipeg's population has grown by about 20,000 people over the last year, and the broader Winnipeg area is growing even faster. We get the story from the CBC's Bartley Kivas.
Winnipeg's population now stands at about 816,000. The Winnipeg Census metropolitan area now has about 937,000 people. This, according to population estimates for July 1st by the city's Economic Development Office. This represents population growth of 2.5% to 3% a year. Tyler Craker, the City of Winnipeg's economist, says the biggest driver is people coming to Canada.
A very significant share of our population growth is driven by immigration.
The city expects population growth to taper off next year. U of M sociologist Laurie Wilkinson says future growth could be even slower if Canada begins to curtail immigration. She says Winnipeg is especially reliant on newcomers to bolster the labor market.
As the numbers decline, our economy in particular is going to start feeling it.
Even with the slower growth, the city expects the Winnipeg Census metro area to reach a population of 1 million by 2031. Winnipeg itself isn't expected to get to 1 million people until 2046. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, an Interlake regional chief says it feels like First Nations there are finally being heard. This after he says the province promised to sign an agreement to review a massive flood mitigation project slated for the region. Lake Manitoba Chief Cornell McLean says he was encouraged during a meeting between Manitoba's premier and other chiefs this week.
The premier was really good, in terms of talking about the channel, about, a reset, and which was good. And, we came to an agreement of the MOU, but it's an agreement between each First Nation, not only one. Like, everybody's going to be involved.
The province wouldn't confirm the promise was made, but in a statement says it is resetting the relationship between First Nations and rural municipalities there as well. Well, with the 10th anniversary of Tina Fontaine's murder approaching, the lead investigator in her death maintains that police charged the right person. Saturday will mark 10 years since the 15-year-old's body was pulled from the Red River. Raymond Cormier was charged with second-degree murder in her death, but later was acquitted by a jury. Winnipeg Police Sergeant John O'Donovan led the investigation. He says poor quality evidence and witness testimony during the trial hurt their chances of conviction.
Do I think we arrested the wrong person and charged the wrong person? I don't believe so. Again, the justice system works, and it didn't like the evidence that we were able to put forward, and that's what happens.
Cormier died in Ottawa last April. A criminologist says there's no guarantee the return of ankle monitors will prevent criminals from reoffending. Frank Cormier works in the Department of Sociology and Criminology at the University of Manitoba. He says electronic ankle monitors the province is bringing back have been around for decades with mixed results.
Many of those people are involved in the use and abuse of drugs or alcohol or have addictions issues, and those people probably would not be deterred from offending simply because they were being monitored electronically.
The province will roll out 100 bracelets to monitor people out on bail at a cost of nearly $3 million over 2 years. One Winnipeg woman says she's not surprised her local 7-Eleven could be closing. The chain is looking at possibly closing 10 stores in Winnipeg due to problems with theft and violence, as well as concerns about worker safety. Among the stores that could close are the one at Salter and Flora. Mallory Amon goes there with her daughter almost daily and says theft is a regular occurrence.
We were just in there and somebody was trying to steal, and it happens every single day. It's because it's the North End. The North End is very bad for crime.
An internal report says in the first quarter of 2024, 7-Eleven's North End locations have matched the number of thefts that it had in all of 2023. CBC did reach out to 7-Eleven for comment yesterday, but so far they have not responded. And finally, it wasn't a weather delay, but a wildlife delay.
Here they come towards the infield. They're taking flight. Edwin escorts them towards the left field side, and now they're just going to park themselves in a shallow left field.
That's the Winnipeg Goldeyes game last night, delayed in the top of the 6th inning after a flock of geese made themselves at home on the field mid-game. It took several baseball players plus field staff on a motorized cart to convince the fowl to move on. The Goldeyes, though, did go on to win that game against the Sioux Falls Canaries by a score of 7-0. Bit of a delay, but...
Is that a foul?
Yeah, exactly.
I wish we could put some little jerseys on those guys.
No kidding.
Turn them into our mascots, Goldeyes. How about the Canada geese?
Yeah, honorary Goldeyes mascots.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Riley.
No problem.
That's CBC's Riley Lachuk, who is joining us from the CBC Manitoba newsroom. And now with a look at the weather, this wet, kind of soggy day out there, here's Abby Adiemi.
Showers across the province, my friend. Rainfall and thunderstorm in the forecast in most areas. Breezy times, local smoke may impact air quality in the northern part of the region. In Winnipeg, 19 at the Forks, 18 at the airport, with periods of light rain being felt at this time. We're aiming for a high of 22. And we should be seeing 10 to 20 millimeters of rain coming to Winnipeg through the day once the system passes. And tonight, the showers will be easing off. And then tomorrow, we will clear up, and then we should be seeing highs near 25, 26. Again, heading west to Brandon, 18 at the moment, also having light showers and a risk of thunderstorm in the forecast, and that will be late this afternoon. Today, we'll be seeing temperatures reaching a high of 24. You just need to note that for folks in Brandon, we had fog patches earlier, and those fog patches are dissipating, but with the rain, you might still be feeling that this morning. You'll be getting about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. Thompson is seeing some foggy conditions at the moment at 18 degrees. Light rain also. Air quality advisory. It's like 3-in-1: fog, rain, and smoke. And that will be the condition throughout the day. You're looking at a high of 24. Now tonight, there's continued chances of that showers, and that smoke will be felt for that region. Same conditions for Churchill. 18 degrees, light rain, air quality advisory in effect. Today will be cloudy a risk of thunderstorm. Expect temperatures to fall to 13 degrees. And then tonight we'll see, you cooling down to 10, though the lingering smoke is still going to be staying with you, and a chance of thunderstorm will be felt tonight. Down in Dauphin, currently 15 and foggy. Expect a mix of sun and clouds today. A slight chance of showers and thunderstorm. It will be breezy, and you'd get to a high of 26. That's the only part of the province missing the rain this morning. But tonight we should be seeing clear skies in Dauphin. Gimli sitting at 20 degrees with light rain at the moment. For the Interlake region, showers expected through the morning, bringing about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain, and you'll be getting high of 22. This showers will be tapering off later tonight, leaving you some cool breezy conditions at around 17 degrees. Steinbach is cloudy at also getting showers this time at 18 degrees, and you should be getting to a high of 28. Morris 19 with light rain. Today's forecast for the Pembina Valley region, we're looking at 20 to 30 millimeters of rain. Expect a high of 22, and tonight the showers will be tapering off and then leaving behind mainly cloudy skies. We're just looking at a wet day ahead across board. Even here in the city, showers will taper off this evening, leaving behind mainly cloudy skies overnight, and then that would clear the way into Friday morning and into the weekend, though some local smoke may drift in by late afternoon tomorrow, and then we should be seeing a high of 22. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 19.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
That's our studio technician and weather forecaster, Abby Adeyemi. And now, with a look at the traffic, here's May McKillop.
Hey, Emily. So one spot that I've heard quite a bit about this morning is an accident on Archibald and Provencher. It's affecting both northbound and southbound Archibald, and both directions are down to the curb lane. As well, I've heard about two different spots with traffic light collisions. So the first is eastbound Logan and King Street, and the second is one second. And the second one, yes, is at Portage and Woodlawn. I heard about that one at about 6 a.m. There weren't any crews directing traffic, and even though the traffic standard is down, the lights were still operating. Any updates, I would love to hear about it. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
Only a few Canadian musicians have had the same kind of success and longevity as Jim Cuddy. He's the co-founder and co-frontman of the band Blue Rodeo, a successful solo artist, and just released a new album. Cuddy's also an officer of the Order of Canada. He's won numerous Juno Awards and has been inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. We could go on, but his band Blue Rodeo is playing the Burt Block Party alongside the Sky Diggers in Indian City. That's on Thursday, August 22nd. The man, the myth, the legend, Jim Cuddy joins us on Zoom. Good morning, Jim. How are you?
What a way to start the day, huh?
Yeah.
Get introduced like that. Wow.
Well, we want you pumped up for this and for the show. So Blue Rodeo started 40 years ago. What's it like playing in a band for that long?
Well, I think it's been, we've had a lot of things that we've gone through, as anybody would. I think it's like any long-term relationship. We've had some bottoming out times, and when we've had many, many exalted times. Very good right now. Everybody is very happy. I mean, at some point you realize you're pretty lucky to be playing in a band that's still popular and that people still want to hear. And it's a lot easier than working construction. And so I think that we're all very happy to be playing and to be playing so well. So that's being in a band for 40 years is everything, and it's been great.
You mentioned some of those ups and downs with other people in the band. I mean, how do you navigate long-term relationships to keep going like you have?
I think you do it like any other long-term relationship. You have to weather the storm sometimes. There has to be the will to continue. I think there always has been the will in this band to continue, even when people have wanted to go off and either not come back or do other things. And I think that you have to talk. You have to do a lot of talking.
Yeah.
And very open talking. And we have certainly learned how to do that. We've learned how to avoid triggering each other, and also just accepting that, we're 7 very unique individuals now. and we're not all going to act the same or be the same. And we have to just accept each other for what we are.
It's true. We all change with time. And speaking of, the long term, your band released 5 Days in July, 31 years ago. What made that album so special and really a true Canadian classic?
Well, it's so nice to hear that it's a Canadian classic. I love that. And I love the fact that we meet so many younger people now who can talk about having been in car rides with their parents playing it over and over and over again. For us, it was a reaction to Lost Together, which was a very loud record and a very loud tour. And we were so exhausted. We'd been to Australia about 4 times. We'd been so exhausted by the end. We wanted to do something that was just more restful, that was more gentle, and coming up with this idea of doing a more acoustic record at Greg's farm. It could not have been better. It could not have turned out better. We set up, we had friends all over the place, tenting, swimming in Greg's pool. Never ever ruined a take. Nobody ever yelled anything out or dogs going through. I mean, everything happened, but not during the actual recording. So it was kind of a magical time for us, and almost a bit of a reward for having worked so tirelessly for, I don't know, at that point, 8 years maybe.
Yeah, and it still sounds great today. So we listed all those accomplishments off the top. You can also add Order of Canada to your achievements. What's it like? That's pretty prestigious.
I think that sometimes Greg and I have a bit of imposter syndrome. When we were sitting with all the other, Mark Carney and all the other people that were receiving their Order of Canada at the same time, and they go up and they would talk about their accomplishments, and we think, maybe this is the wrong room. Maybe this is the one we're getting. But I also recognize that Greg and I have been lucky to be part of a kind of a burgeoning of Canadian culture, at least in music. And if the award is certainly for our accomplishments, but it's also for the accomplishments of Canadiana, as it, we're almost the beginning of it in the 80s and where it ends up now. Where it ends up now, I mean, most musicians come around and they think that Canada is listened to by the world just automatically. And that just simply wasn't the case for when we started. And so I think that we think of it in historic terms, and we think we're pretty fortunate to come around when we did.
Yeah. So back to the present day, you're playing the Burt Block Party in Winnipeg next week, and that's for the second year in a row, although you were rained out last year. What makes the Winnipeg crowd special for Blue Rodeo?
We've had some of the greatest gigs in Winnipeg. The number of times we played the Folk Fest, having these great concerts and then running away from the gigantic mosquitoes that happened later on. We were early on in the Burt, which used to be called the Walker Theater, when they opened up the upper balcony. And for us, it was a revelation because we're so used to Ontario, which is so restrictive, or used to be so restrictive in all cases. You couldn't possibly drink while you were watching a concert in case you would, I don't know, throw it at the band or something. But when we saw that it was this beautiful theater that had all the characteristics of a theater, sounded great. It was easy to play it, but it also had the characteristics of a bar. It was comfortable. People could drink. They sit in their seats. So we've had that. And then moving to the arena, we've had some great shows in the arena. So Winnipeg audiences are great. They're very musical. They're very enthusiastic, and they're great venues. And so we have a good history in Winnipeg.
Well, we're so glad you're coming back and looking forward to your show. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jim.
My pleasure. You have a great day.
As co-founder and co-frontman of the band Blue Rodeo, the group is one of the headliners at the Burt Block Party this summer, along with Headstones, the Arkells, and Tom Cochrane. The festival runs August 22nd to the 25th, just outside the Burton Cummings Theatre.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
It's 7:47. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1 from Winnipeg. I'm Emily Brass. Tina Fontaine was just 15 years old when she was killed, and in her short life, she experienced exploitation and abuse. Fontaine's murder became a rallying cry for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people movement. The police devoted countless hours trying to track down her killer, and her murder outraged Canadians. CBC's Brittany Greenslade sat down with the now retired police officer John O'Donovan, who led the investigation a decade ago.
I felt that us as the police did the best we could with what we had to work with. It was a very intense investigation. I felt a lot of pressure in it, but it was all self-imposed pressure. We certainly didn't want an unsolved case. I mean, someone's getting away with murder. And we also, because Tina was such a young girl and just a child, and it was such a tragedy that everybody in the office put in a huge effort, and it was a big team effort. So, right now, looking back at it, I can honestly say we did the best we could.
We know that ultimately there was somebody arrested for that, somebody charged, somebody that went to trial.
Yes.
Raymond Cormier, he was found not guilty.
That's correct. He was acquitted, and you looking back on that too, and at the time I probably was very disappointed with it and everything. But now, on reflection, we have an amazing justice system in Canada, and we should actually be all so grateful for what we've got. But like everything else, it's not perfect. And we put forward the best case that we had with the best evidence we could get. Could it have been better? Oh yeah. It just wasn't there. The quality of the witnesses was poor. They were people like Raymond Cormier. They had addictions problems. They had dealt with homelessness. What they told us at the time of the investigation and what they could recall when they went to court were miles apart. And like I said, we did the best we could, and these were the people that were involved, that knew what happened, that kind of were able to piece it all together in this massive big jigsaw for us. But the quality of their evidence just wasn't great. Do I think we arrested the wrong person and charged the wrong person? I don't believe so.
Pressure from outside people because of this case being this young 15-year-old girl missing and murdered Indigenous women. But you also said there was a pressure from yourself. How do you think that pressure played into this investigation? And what were those pressures you put on yourself?
The pressure that I put on myself was one that I put on myself with every investigation that I worked on, and especially the ones that I led. That you can't let this go unsolved. You have to find out. To get it to court is a big thing. For the police, we get it to court. We want to get it into the court. What happens in court is between the lawyers and the judges and the juries. We got to get it there, and that's no easy task. So that to get it to that stage was absolutely, huge pressure to get it there, and to try to think what to do, the decisions that had to be made along the way, trying to focus on an individual or individuals, depending on where that investigation took us, ruling people in, ruling people out, and then just all the time gathering more information and piecing it together and trying to figure out what's the next step. And during our project, we also had to look at, okay, now we've got this guy, we're pretty sure at this point, and we're gathering more evidence all throughout the project, but we also got to keep people safe as well.
That was Project Styx that you led, and at the time it was said to be the most elaborate and ambitious undercover project that the Winnipeg Police Service had ever done.
Yes. Yeah.
What can you tell us about that project? It was a big deal, and there was a lot that went into that.
Yeah, it was a huge deal. In fairness, the service got behind it. They never questioned the cost of it, which obviously there's a huge cost involved in it, and I know it definitely ran into six figures. And they never questioned the decisions that I made. and what had to be done and what I felt had to be done in order to either rule things in or rule things out. Going with a wiretap project is a huge undertaking, and then implanting undercover agents as well, even more so. And the planning that went into every single movement of the undercover officers was absolutely huge. Every single thing that was being done and everything that was being said had to be planned out. Scripts had to be made, so these people who were in the undercover roles, they certainly couldn't just come out and say things. They can't ask leading questions. So they've got to be very, very careful. It's for all the world like directing a movie but the stakes are so much higher.
What's the stress like in that? Because this is, the Mr. Big sting operations. These are the trying to get a confession, which, there was some interesting words and audio that he said in those, but you didn't quite get those exact words that you, I think, were hoping. Is that correct?
No, I didn't get the full-blown confession, but there was a lot of other evidence that came out. It's not just the interaction between the individual and the officers, the undercover officers and the agents. It's the overall perspective that we're getting. There was other recordings that we had, that made me believe that we had the right person. There's conversations that he had with his own friends that we were able to intercept and hear things.
What was that day like for you? We heard how she was found, but as an officer on the scene, as the officers that are investigating it, what is that moment like? She'd been missing for 8 days, and when her body's finally found and in the way it was found.
It was actually, no different to the beginning of any other homicide investigation. It's intense. You're trying to get the background and trying to identify who you have. That was such a big thing. And it did not look like a 15-year-old girl, unfortunately. And I'm very happy that those images were never released to the public because they were extremely disturbing. And so it took hours and hours before we could even start to think that this was Tina Fontaine. And once we did, it was sickening. It was upsetting and it was sickening to know that, oh my God, you got this little girl. And when you look at the picture that was put out for her missing person poster, she's just a little girl. And now she's disposed of in this manner that it was absolutely disgusting.
You say that you still feel that you got the right man, even though there was that not guilty verdict.
Mm-hmm.
What was that trial like for you to hear all of it and then to see all of your hard work and hear that acquittal?
I didn't go to the trial. I didn't attend any of it. One thing you have to realize is that from the day we found Tina's body to the day that we arrested and charged Cormier, we investigated 17 other homicides. So it was, it's not like the movies where you just work on one case. We worked on 18 cases during that time period, including the Tina Fontaine one. So I didn't go to the trial. I wasn't subpoenaed to testify. And I got daily updates, and I did follow, it in the media and on Twitter and whatever. But so it was, and I knew what we had going into it. I was disappointed. I was very disappointed with the outcome. But looking back at it, I certainly can't point a finger and say it was ridiculous, it was stupid, because it's the system we have. And like I say, it's not perfect, but it's a great system and it works.
John O'Donovan was the lead investigator on Tina Fontaine's murder case, and he spoke with CBC's Brittany Greenslade about the impact her case had on him 10 years later. Well, we're coming up on time for national news, but first, Riley Leitchuk has a look at the Manitoba headlines.
Good morning. One Winnipeg woman says she is not surprised to hear that her local 7-Eleven could be closing. The chain is looking at possibly closing 10 stores in Winnipeg, including the one at Salter and Flora, due to ongoing thefts and violence. Mallory Amon says the loss of that store would be a huge loss for her neighborhood. And an Interlake Region chief says he feels like First Nations there are finally being heard by the province. This after he says the province promised to sign an agreement to review plans for a massive flood mitigation project in the region. Lake Manitoba Chief Cornell McLean says he was encouraged after meeting with the Premier and other chiefs from the region this week. I'll bring you more on those stories coming up after World Report.
Thanks, Riley.
No problem.
That's CBC's Riley Leitchuk. Well, it's 19 degrees with rain right now in Winnipeg. Those showers continuing this morning, 10 to 20 millimeters expected, and it's going to be breezy this afternoon with a high of 22. It'll feel like 27 with the humidex. A few showers this evening. They'll end in the evening. Then it'll be mainly cloudy and breezy with a low of 16. Tomorrow, clearing, local smoke late in the morning and in the afternoon. Breezy, high 25. Well, still to come on Information Radio this morning, as cases of Mpox skyrocket in parts of Africa, a Manitoba microbiologist is studying the virus up close. We're going to speak with Jason Kindrachuk. He's going to share what he learned while he was in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Of course, that's where this disease is really, the outbreak is happening right now. And then also, how many junk drawers do you have? We're going to meet a clutter expert who can help you get them organized and declutter. That's some news you could use. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app, on our website, and on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. World Report is coming up next.
Today on Q.
Are you sure you want to do this?
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Director Fede Alvarez didn't want to rely on CGI for his new film, Alien Romulus. He'll tell you why he used practical effects and even hired the puppeteers from the original Alien movies to make a convincing space thriller.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Susan Bonner. A UN report calls Canada's temporary foreign workers program a breeding ground for slavery, saying it cuts costs for companies but exploits vulnerable workers. How businesses came to rely on this push to low wages on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A new round of talks to end the Israel-Hamas war have begun in Doha, but expectations for a deal are low. Negotiations have been complicated by the assassination of one of Hamas's top leaders. The United States says it is still committed to getting a ceasefire plan in place. For more, let's go to Richard Madden in Washington. Richard, what is the state of these talks this morning?
Yeah, in a word, delicate. Top officials from the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar will meet with an Israeli delegation in Doha for the first time in months. There's little hope for a breakthrough, but there is potential for progress and to lower the temperature in the volatile region. Now, Hamas says it won't attend the talks, but they'll listen to mediators. They accuse Israel of stalling negotiations to keep the war going, while Israel accuses Hamas of stalling and continuing to keep hostages. Take a listen to State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel.
Our point of view is that all negotiators should return to the table and bring this deal to conclusion. It is far time for the remaining hostages to be released, which of course include American American citizens and bring relief to the people of Gaza under the deal that is now on the table.
Of course, fueling more tensions are those retaliation threats by Iran against Israel after Hamas leader was recently killed on Iranian soil. And that could widen the conflict in the Middle East.
The United States has been heavily involved in talks since the war began in October. Is its presence at the negotiating table still being seen as valuable?
Yeah, the initial framework for the ceasefire deal was proposed by the U.S., and there was an agreement in principle, but the Israelis and Hamas are at odds of some of the key points, including how long the ceasefire would last and the control of the checkpoints in Gaza. Now, President Joe Biden says he believes a wider crisis can still be averted if both sides agree to a ceasefire.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
Richard Madden reporting from Washington. The president of Columbia University has resigned months after protests over the war in Gaza took over the New York City campus. Minouche Shafik was criticized for authorizing protests on school property. That marked the first time mass arrests had been made on Columbia's campus since protests over the Vietnam War. Shafik is the third president of an Ivy League school to step down over protests related to the Israel-Hamas conflict. In Kolkata, India. Tens of thousands of women marched and held signs in overnight protests. They are demanding justice. A 31-year-old trainee doctor was murdered at the hospital where she worked. India's prime minister is now calling for stricter punishment for crimes committed against women.
एक समाज के नाते हमें गंभीरता से सोचना होगा.
In a speech during India's Independence Day celebrations, Narendra Modi says the country must take these crimes seriously. A volunteer hospital worker was arrested in connection with the case in Kolkata. There have been accusations of cover-up and negligence by the authorities. A new report into the death of a young BC firefighter is looking at safety protocols at the province's wildfire service. Devon Gale was killed last summer. A burning tree fell on her near Revelstoke. The report's findings could lead to changes to the organization's internal culture. Brady Strachan has the story.
The death of Devon Gale sent a shockwave through the province last July. Just 19 years old, Gale was already in her third season with the BC Wildfire Service.
She was a light. Nobody met
Devon. A memorial service was attended by hundreds of her fellow wildland firefighters. Now, details have emerged about what led up to Gale's death and what didn't happen with regards to safety protocols around danger trees. A WorkSafe BC report says Gale was using a chainsaw to cut a log on the forest floor when a burning cedar fell and killed her. The report lays out the missed safety steps at the site, including that firefighters brought up concerns to their supervisor about the burning tree. Despite this, the tree was not assessed and Gale was allowed to work around it. The agency also found the BC Wildfire Service has a culture that normalizes risks around dangerous trees, even though it's aware of the safety concerns related to them. David Greer heads the BC Wildfire Service. Greer says he accepts the report.
This isn't gross negligence by certain individuals. This is the whole of the organization that needs to look at this and do the right thing.
BC Premier David Eby addressed the report's findings.
It was a commitment that I made to Devon's family that this death of a remarkable woman would not be in vain.
Eby says he's directing the Wildfire Service to implement all of the recommendations. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
Advocates for temporary foreign workers in this country say the wage theft, excessive work hours, and physical abuse outlined in a recent report have been happening for years. A United Nations special rapporteur looked into the temporary foreign workers program here in Canada. Nick Murray has more reaction to the findings.
Unfortunately, not a lot has changed.
Amanda Aziz is a staff lawyer with the Migrant Workers Centre in British Columbia. She authored a report 2 years ago which outlined many of the findings on abuse in the new UN report. The rapporteur on contemporary slavery found Canada's temporary foreign workers were being underpaid, not getting protective equipment, having their documents confiscated, and were being prevented from seeking health care.
I do think that there is a conversation to be had about the kinds of working conditions that unfortunately migrant workers are willing to accept. And it is because of the way that we've structured our programs.
According to the rapporteur's report, those structures have led to a power imbalance, where temporary foreign workers can only work for whoever applied to bring them to Canada. It's partly why the rapporteur concluded Canada's program is a breeding ground for contemporary slavery.
I object to the characterization.
But Immigration Minister Mark Miller acknowledged the abuses outlined in the report and said it needs to stop.
Any person in Canada, regardless of who they employ, need to treat people with dignity and respect according to law, and that isn't happening in some sectors.
The number of temporary foreign workers approved to come to Canada has more than doubled since 2018. Last year, employers were cleared to hire almost 240,000 of them. Nick Murray, CBC News, Ottawa.
We have an update on the landslide at the Eagle Gold Mine in Yukon. A pile of cyanide-soaked ore collapsed back in June, and there have been concerns for the safety of the surrounding land and water. Yukon's government took the Victoria Gold Corporation to court. Now a third party is taking over environmental protection work. Jackie Hong has the details.
Yukon Justice Minister Tracy Ann McPhee says the government lost confidence.
Victoria Gold has either been unwilling or unable to date to fulfill the necessary work.
That work centers on preventing more cyanide from entering the surrounding environment. Millions of tons of raw ore being leached with the chemical slid off a pile at the Eagle Gold Mine in late June and into a local stream. Victoria Gold had been in charge of treating the contaminated water. The Yukon government has done inspections and issued corrective orders, but the company hasn't fully complied. Concerns escalated after dead fish were found in a nearby creek at the beginning of August. The government successfully applied to have Victoria Gold put into receivership this week. PricewaterhouseCoopers has been appointed by the court to manage the company's affairs. McPhee says that will ensure proper environmental protection work happens on site.
Nobody wanted to go here.
The mine is on the traditional territory of the First Nation of Nacho Dun. Chief Donna Hope says an intervention is overdue.
Immediate steps are needed to address the millions of liters of toxic cyanide and other contaminants spreading from the mine site.
Victoria Gold CEO and President John McConnell didn't respond to a request for comment. The receiver's staff are now on site. Jackie Hong, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Security will be on high alert on Taylor Swift's Eras Tour tonight in London. Last week, her Vienna shows were cancelled to prevent an alleged terror attack. And 2 weeks before that, 3 young girls were killed at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in the English town of Southport. Nick Adelworth is the UK's former counter-terrorism national coordinator. He says crowd control is just one measure being taken tonight.
There may be security systems that we don't see. There may be covert officers with behavioural detection skills who are looking for people who are behaving abnormally. There is almost certainly going to be active use of CCTV camera systems to watch the crowds, watch what's going on.
Fans who did not get tickets for tonight's show are being asked not to stand outside Wembley Stadium. Taylor Swift fans often gather outside stadiums during her concerts. They call it tailgating. In Munich last month, an estimated 40,000 people were on the hillside at the concert venue. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. And you can listen to us live every morning on the CBC News app. Just tap the local icon. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass, and I'm filling in for Marcy Marcusa. Here's what's coming up on this hour of the show. For the second time in 2 years, the World Health Organization has declared Mpox a global health emergency. We're going to speak with Winnipeg microbiologist Jason Kindrachuk, who's studied the disease on the ground in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Also, how many junk drawers do you have? I can think of at least 3 at my house, just off the top of my head. We're going to meet a clutter expert who can help you get those drawers organized and declutter. Always a great feeling, so stick around for that. You're listening to Information Radio. 11 minutes after 8 o'clock. Time for news headlines with Riley Lachuk.
Good morning. Well, new figures show Winnipeg's population grew by about 20,000 people over the last year. The city's Economic Development Office says 816,000 people now live in the Manitoba capital. Newcomers to Canada, the biggest driver of that growth. We'll bring you more on that coming up. And the former police sergeant who led the search for Tina Fontaine's killer maintains that the right person was charged. Saturday marks 10 years since Fontaine's body was pulled from the Red River. Raymond Cormier was charged in that killing but was later acquitted by a jury. We'll hear from John O'Donovan, who led that investigation, coming up in your news at 8:30.
Thank you, Riley.
No problem.
That's CBC's Riley Lachuk. And joining us now with a look at the weather is Abby Adeyemi. Abby, I was just looking at the radar, and there's this huge green blob across southern Manitoba, not so much up north where it's really, really needed.
Yeah, I know. It's we're hoping that moves that way also by the end of the system. You're right. But down south here, we have more of like a wet condition. We're going to be seeing 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. That's what will be coming through Winnipeg today. Similar conditions, like you mentioned, across the south this morning. Rainfall and thunderstorm in the forecast in most of the areas. Some breezy conditions at times. Local smoke will be impacting air quality in the northern region. Winnipeg right now under rain shower at 19. Similar conditions we are being we're feeling across board. In other regions, I'll tell you it's going to be more like some thunderstorms will be expected later. Varying temperatures we will be seeing. Up north, we have that air quality statement in place for Swan River, Grand Rapids, all the way down to Thompson Churchill. Thompson currently seeing some misty conditions at 18 degrees, and Churchill is at 16 with light rain. Light rain also in Brandon at this time and most of the south. Dauphin is actually mainly sunny at 17, and Gimli, Steinbach, Morris all hovering near 20 degrees. It's just going to be wet and breezy across a board today, and we should be seeing highs of 22. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 19.
Thank you so much, Abby.
Thank you.
And joining me now with a look at the traffic here is May McKillop. She's also our studio director, and she's been keeping an eye on the roads.
Hey, Emily. Good morning. So I've been hearing about an accident on Archibald and Provencher affecting both northbound and southbound Archibald. So both directions are down to just one lane, the curb lane. As well, there's two spots that we've been hearing about throughout the city that have had traffic light collisions. The first is eastbound Logan and King Street, and the other is a traffic standard down at Portage and Woodlawn.
I wonder if it's slippery out there.
I think so.
That's probably has something to do with it.
The phone's been ringing off the hook this morning. So
yeah, because it's like maybe people have their less, sticky tires on because it's not the winter, and they're not really braking far enough in advance. I don't know.
Also,
be careful out there.
Abby's coming in with a hot take.
One thing drivers need to take into consideration is if another car moves in front of you at a faster velocity and speed, and there are like puddles on the way, it would splash on your windshield and might hamper your drive. So that could also be something to take into consideration. Make sure your wipers are working at optimal speed this morning, because that will happen for sure. We have puddles splashing here and there. And if it splashes on your windscreen, it might just distract you for a bit, and you might lose focus of where the road is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And a reminder, watch out for the bikers and the walking commuters around you. They don't want to get splashed by a puddle.
Right, it's true. That's
For
happened to me
sure.
before, and it's rotten. So yeah,
Absolutely.
take it easy out there. Just go slowly if you can.
Absolutely. And we have time for one more traffic hit just before the 8:30 news. So if anyone wants to let me know, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
It's 8:15. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM in Winnipeg. Also heard around the globe on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel, the CBC Listen app, and on our website. I'm Emily Brass. Well, Mpox rates continue to skyrocket in Africa. Just yesterday, the World Health Organization declared the infectious disease a global health emergency, and the announcement came the day after the African Center for Disease Disease Control declared its first ever continental public health emergency for Mpox. The disease can be transmitted through various forms of close contact, and it can cause a range of symptoms from painful pus-filled lesions to severe illness and death. Winnipeg microbiologist Jason Kindrachuk has seen up close how quickly the disease can spread. He recently spent time in the Democratic Republic of the Congo studying Mpox. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning.
So you just got back from the DRC. What's it like over there right now?
Well, I think we have to appreciate that certainly for DR Congo and many of the areas, kind of in the region. First of all, this is not their first foray into Mpox, but also, they have, Ebola outbreaks from time to time. They have other, emerging infectious diseases that are endemic in the region. They know how to work, on these and provide support. So I think from that standpoint, there's concern with the breadth of the current national outbreak and certainly the international spread. But they're throwing everything that they possibly have at it, and including, just probably the best global expertise with combating Mpox.
And as we mentioned, the WHO just named Mpox a global health emergency for the second time. What did you think when you heard the news?
Yeah, not necessarily surprising, right? I think we had this idea, that we were moving towards this probably even in mid to late 2023, just based on the trajectory of cases. Certainly the international spread to Burundi, Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda recently has increased that concern because those are countries that have not had cases previously. So I'm not surprised. I don't think my colleagues were surprised. I think our question moving forward is, what will this mean in terms of getting resources or vaccines onto the ground and sustained support? But I think the most important piece is that everybody from the international community is once again talking about Mpox. It's back top of mind. So I think there's a sense of kind of some optimism that maybe we will see support coming this time.
And that's probably part of why it's important for the WHO to make that kind of declaration. How does this current spread of Mpox differ from what we've seen in the past with this disease?
Yeah, it's complicated, right? So we, I think everybody knows in 2022, we saw a global outbreak in the global north and in high-income countries. That was particularly, related to sexual contact-based transmission. We've not seen that previously in DR Congo for the particular type of monkeypox virus that they have circulating there. We picked that up earlier this year in a cluster, actually late last year in a cluster of cases in Congo province. We picked it up again in South Kivu. And now what we're seeing in South Kivu province is that sexual contact-based transmission is really skyrocketing in the area. The problem is that in the rest of the country, we still have zoonotic transmission, that wildlife-based transmission that's dominating cases. So the issue for us is we're now combating this from both the wildlife contact piece, but also now by the sustained human transmission piece as well.
And how fast is it spreading?
I would say extremely fast. So if we take a look at, just comparatively, most previous years, we've been looking at a few thousand cases. From January 2023 to now, we've seen around 30,000 suspected cases, and we've seen spread now to most of the 26 provinces, whereas traditionally there had only been 11 endemic provinces in DR Congo, and that includes border regions. So we're seeing a very, very quick spread, and the problem is we're in a resource-limited area, so we don't have the diagnostics and certainly the the contact tracing capacity to be able to identify all of those cases expediently. So it's becoming a bit of a cat and mouse race right now.
So how is Mpox, being handled on the ground given all that?
Difficultly. That's really the reality. I think this kind of goes back to this idea that we don't have vaccines that are available in Congo. Certainly not through through a large scale deployment program. And currently, where we have limited resources and diagnostics. So a big part of it is, first of all, trying to get access to many rural communities where we're seeing cases, ensuring that people have the potential to be able to come forward and report cases, but also, a lot of community engagement, trying to get messaging out to, again, a very diverse, large area within DR Congo, and ensuring that people understand what the disease looks like and also how it may differ from what we've seen historically.
And back here in Canada, as of late July, 93 cases have been reported in Toronto. How concerned should we be about the spread of Mpox in this country?
Well, I wish we would have never forgotten about it, right? And I think the reality is, mid to late 2022, as cases started to plummet, there was that sense of, kind of mission accomplished. We defeated it. The virus never disappeared. It wasn't eliminated. We continue to see clusters of cases. We're seeing a bit of a resurgence now. The difference for us is certainly from a vaccine access standpoint, there is vaccine accessible. We can talk about, community engagement and the need to make it more accessible for individuals. But certainly from community engagement, there's a lot ongoing. But I think we just need to appreciate, this particular type of monkeypox virus has not disappeared. It's associated with less severe disease than what we see in Congo, but it doesn't mean that it's, it's avirulent. It still can cause significant disease.
And earlier you touched on having a bit of optimism and, hearing about this global health emergency can be a little overwhelming. What is it about the situation that gives you some sense of hope?
Well, my biggest sense of hope is based on really the people that are involved on the frontline response. Listen, I've spent time, in Ebola outbreaks, spent time in other areas of Africa. The one thing I think we tend to forget is that there are global experts on the ground in these countries that are leading these efforts. DR Congo, certainly at the forefront of this with Mpox. That's the piece that gives me optimism. When you see the level of knowledge, the level of expertise, the level of community engagement, and certainly the sense of importance of this in our local Congolese colleagues, you get the sense that they're not going to let anything kind of get between them and seeing the end of this.
Well, thanks so much for joining us and sharing your experiences, Jason.
Thank you so much.
Jason Kindrachuk is the Canada Research Chair on Emerging Viruses at the University of Manitoba. Coming up on 23 minutes after 8 o'clock, you're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass. Well, if you're like many people, you have a drawer in your house, maybe more, probably in the kitchen, filled with junk, hence the name usually associated with the junk drawer. CBC's Adrienne Lambs dropped by a special event in Edmonton to deal with our inclination to hoard all those little bits and pieces, clothespins, rubber bands, all the stuff that ends up in those junk drawers. Here she is at a clutter intervention.
Nicole Simpson is combing through her kitchen junk drawer and confessing about what's inside.
9,000 elastic bands, another 30, 40 Ziploc bags to store said elastic bands. We've got tape from Christmases past. We've got the kid who's now 21's lunch bag in there. It's a good drawer. Oh, we had the birthday candles as well, which we don't normally find on the birthday, but there they are.
This nurse, wife, and mother of two is not alone. A dozen people have come together to dump out their drawers. It's an intervention of sorts at the Edmonton Reuse Centre, an evening session where a decluttering coach is offering up tips and tricks.
We've got bag clips, handy jar openers.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good. I'm ready to empty the drawer. We're ready to go. We've heard the lesson. I'm going to adhere to it.
Now, what did you take away from the lesson?
I took away looking at it and saying that I need it to function for me because it doesn't function currently. It's just taking up space. And if I look for tape, it takes me 10 times the length of time to find it. And we honestly have looked for birthday candles and can't find those.
Caitlin Beekhouse runs Sort and Simple Professional Organizing, and she's circling the room, checking out the progress.
So Nicole has brought in her kitchen junk drawer, and she's working on going through the 5 steps of organizing that we went over today. Starting with, she created her vision, and now she's working on doing some decluttering and categorization. From there, we're going to work on setting up a system where she can easily access the items within the drawer.
How does it make you feel to see this in action?
It's really exciting because I think so many of us are overwhelmed by our space. We're not able to find the things that we want. We have some guilt and shame around it. So when we can take a small, achievable step towards being organized and reaching our goals, it gives us so much more confidence. And organizing is about way more than the space. It's about how it makes us feel.
Talk to me about the feeling part of this.
with Instagram and the different things we see online, there's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves to have perfect homes and picture perfect homes. And I think it's important to remember that our spaces are supposed to be functional first and foremost and to bring us joy.
And she believes junk drawers shouldn't be viewed as just a spot to stash stuff.
I think a junk drawer is a really great tool that says, hey, I don't know where this belongs yet, so let's put it here, and then I can look at all the things as they accumulate and create categories later. Part of why we hold on to things in our space is because we have maybe a sentimental attachment to it, but also our things become our identity. So whether it's the books that went to school with us and it's what we've learned, or the memories of trips we took as a family. And I think it's important to remember that memories are inside of us, not inside of our things. The things are just a trigger for the memory. And we might not always need to hold on to the physical item that's taking up lots of space. There's other ways we can trigger our memories.
Beekhouse says taking pictures of items instead of keeping the actual thing might be one way. Learning to let go or not bringing things into the house to begin with can also help. But overbuying is a problem.
My name is Colin McDougall. I am a member of the Marketing Area Group faculty at Ivey Business School, which is part of Western University.
He's not at the session, but he does have a junk drawer.
Well, in our home, there are Band-Aids, there are rubber bands, there are batteries, things to hang pictures with, the little hooks, those sorts of things. There's a mini tape measure, dice, deck of playing cards. And I did look it up, actually. The number one item in junk drawers, rubber band.
And McDougall says it's not a stretch to think companies want you to buy more pens or chip bag clips or whatever.
At the moment of purchase, I think you make a rationalization on the judgment of just how many of those sort of things you might need. And often, we as marketers are really good at making you sort of feel like, well, you may only need 2 of them, but why not get 6 because the price is so much more attractive on a per unit basis. What is left over, a lot of times just sits around. And the latency cost there is not very high. You don't tend to think about it. And the rare time when we do need something from the junk drawer, that activity gets played up a lot for, hey, look, aren't you glad we had this here, right now to solve this particular problem? And that, I think, in some ways is a reinforcer of decision around the purchase of all these items.
Remember nurse Nicole Simpson and her kitchen drawer? Well, she's done.
We have a very much more functional drawer with about 1/10 of the items that were in there before. Some went donation. There was some garbage. So much more cleaned up drawer. Much more functional.
This is remarkable. How long did that take you?
I'm going to say about 20 minutes, 25 minutes with the support of the other classmates. Because I think that's part of it, is that every time you look at what your life is doing and what you're doing at home, you open it up and think, no, not today. So it was nice to have that focus time. Yeah. And someone who's an expert at it to say it's time to do it and here's how to do it. So
lessons she says she'll be applying to the other 5 or 6 junk drawers dotting the rest of her house. I'm Adrienne Lamb.
Thanks, Adrienne. Always a good feeling to declutter. And as it turns out, our own Abby Adeyemi is a bit of a specialist in decluttering. But how do you handle it?
If I don't touch it in 45 days, I snap it or I rip it or I smash it. So you could hire me and I will help you declutter your junk drawer.
Wow. Okay. I might just take you up on that, Abby. Be careful what you offer. And that's CBC's Abby Adeyemi, our studio technician. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM in Winnipeg. And the local CBC Manitoba news is up next.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Riley Lachuk. It's 8:30 and 19 degrees in Winnipeg. A real wet start to the day across much of southern Manitoba. Looking at a wet day today, 22 are high in Winnipeg this afternoon. We begin this morning with new figures showing Winnipeg's population growing by about 20,000 people over the past year. The city's Economic Development Office says about 816,000 people now call the Manitoba capital home. Newcomers to Canada are the biggest driver of that growth. U of M sociologist Laurie Wilkinson says change changes to federal immigration policy could threaten future growth. Both the governing Liberals and opposition Conservatives have linked the housing crisis to high numbers of newcomers.
I'm half a century old, and I've never seen so much anti-immigrant rhetoric and scapegoating of immigrants and international students with regards to housing.
Well, even with no changes to immigration policy, the city expects population growth to taper off next year. Winnipeg is not expected to get to 1 million people until 2046. An Interlake Region chief says the province will sign a memorandum of understanding to review a massive flood mitigation project. It comes after a federal government report released in June found the Interlake Flood Channel project would likely harm local Indigenous communities. Lake Manitoba First Nation Chief Cornell McLean says the promise is a long time coming.
Maybe there's an alternative route. Maybe there's something that we missed during the first, round of talks, because there was no consultation. As you know, it was basically rammed down our throats by the former progressive conservative government, and we didn't take that lightly.
The province says in a statement it recognizes the need for flood mitigation in the Interlake and is resetting the relationship with both First Nations and rural municipalities. The former police sergeant who led the search for Tina Fontaine's killer maintains that they charged the right guy. Saturday will mark 10 years since the 15-year-old's body was pulled from Winnipeg's Red River. Raymond Cormier was charged in the killing but later acquitted by a jury. John O'Donovan led the investigation into Fontaine's death. He says secret police recordings didn't capture a fulsome confession from Cormier, but they did catch Cormier describing an instance where he thought he saw Tina Fontaine's ghost.
The one thing that he said, which I found was dynamite, she was even wearing the same white skirt. In all the pictures we put out of Tina, she never wore a white skirt. Unfortunately, the body we took from the river, she was wearing a white skirt.
Cormier died in Ottawa last April. A University of Manitoba criminologist says the research is mixed when it comes to the effectiveness of electronic ankle monitors. The province announced yesterday it will begin using the bracelets to keep track of eligible people who are out on bail. Frank Cormier works in the Department of Sociology and Criminology at the U of M. He says the monitors may help prevent some people from reoffending.
If the technology is working as intended, and if it is being monitored and someone is ready and able to respond immediately, then that certainly could improve the effectiveness, because the response to the breach would be swift, and again, it would be certain.
But Cormier says ankle monitors generally only have a deterrent effect on people who act rationally. Frequent shoppers at one Winnipeg 7-Eleven that could close say it would be a huge loss for the area. Chronic problems with theft and violence have 7-Eleven thinking of closing 10 locations in Winnipeg. Among them, the location on Salter at Flora. Mallory Amond goes there with her daughter almost daily. She says theft happens regularly, and she's even tried intervening herself. She says if that store closed, the area would have fewer grocery options.
I get where 7-Eleven's coming from of wanting to close their stores, but at the same time, they're taking away business from people that actually want their services.
According to a 7-Eleven internal report, the store at Salter and Flora has experienced more than $323,000 worth of theft. 7-Eleven did not respond to CBC's request for comment yesterday. And finally, a town near the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border is making an enticing cash offer for people to move there. Moosomin, which is about 20 kilometers west of the Manitoba border, is offering $30,000 to anybody who builds a home in town. The town has about 3,300 people right now. It is preparing for a potential boom. Local chamber president Kevin Weedmark says the town is gearing up with plans for a second daycare and a new water treatment plant.
We've got people trying to bring new employees in, and there's just no place for them to live. So that was the one. It's booming quickly. It's growing. It's expanding, but the housing just hasn't kept up with the other growth.
The town is paying for the incentive using $1 million it got from the federal government's Housing Accelerator Fund. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thanks, Riley.
No
Not
problem.
a bad discount there
No,
if you're
not
going
at
to
all.
build a house. 30
Exactly.
grand. Yeah. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And we actually got a message from one of our listeners, Jason Boychuk. We were talking about the slippery roads out there. And he says a lot of that is probably because of fluids leaking from vehicles. And he quotes a newspaper article from Victoria from the Times Colonist. And the expert expert there says that they can be spread from dry periods where things leak out of the vehicle, and then when the rain finally comes, it's a matter of physics that oil and water don't mix, and those fluids are up on top, and they can be quite slippery. So potential theory there. Meanwhile, the rain is still continuing. Abby Adiemi, what's going on with the weather?
Watch out for pedestrians. Don't splash them, please.
Yeah.
Steady rain here downtown Winnipeg right now. We have showers up across board. We are going to be seeing that air quality advisory in effect due to that lingering smoke stay with the northern part of the province for most of the day. Thompson is heading to a high of 24 and Churchill will drop to 13. We're looking at rainy day in the city, really across the south. We're going to see temperatures in the 20s, and this will be tapering off this evening, leaving behind mainly cloudy skies as we head into Friday, though some local smoke may drift in by late afternoon tomorrow. But right now, it's 19 in Winnipeg, heading to a high of 22.
Thank you, Abby. CBC's Abby Adiemi. And thanks to everyone who called into our commuter line as you're out there dealing with all the splashing, the puddles, the fog, difficult conditions. So take it easy out there on your way in. I'm Emily Brass, and I'm really enjoying filling in this week for Marcy Marcusa. The Current is coming up next.